Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. If you would, please immediately grab a seat, sit down, and get ready for an exciting meeting. We'll start tonight with a roll call from our city clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record shall reflect that all members are present.
And Councilmember Contreras will lead us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our city clerk has some procedural items to cover. If you would, again, please be in order.
Thank you, Mayor. In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. I would like to remind everyone that the Vista Municipal Code requires members of the public to observe order and decorum at the meeting and to conduct themselves in a courteous manner. The ordinance was adopted to allow for public input and to facilitate city business without disruption of the meeting. Applause is appropriate for items listed under the presentation portion of the agenda only. Students wishing to receive credit for attending this evening's meeting must stay for a minimum of 1 hour. However, we ask that you stay for the completion of an item rather than leaving in the middle of a discussion. When you're ready to leave, you may ask one of the staff members at the back of the room to sign your paper. Thank you.
Thank you. To speak on an item on tonight's agenda, please fill out a speaker slip with the number of the item you'd like to speak on. Give it to the clerk, secretary, staff here at the dais. Speaker slips are available on the table just outside the chamber doors. For members of the public participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature to indicate that you'd like to speak, or press *9 on your touchtone phone. And we will announce when to raise your hand to indicate you'd like to make a comment on the specific item being discussed. Speakers will have 3 minutes each to address the City Council. Now we'll go to our City Manager, John Conley, for approval of tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. No changes to this evening's agenda.
Yeah, we have 3 presentations tonight. I'd like to invite my fellow council members to join me at the lectern for those presentations. Okay, our first presentation is one declaring October 6th through the October 12th, 2024 week as Fire Prevention Week in Vista, and October 2024 as Fire Prevention Month in the City of Vista. Accepting this proclamation this evening will be our Fire Chief, Gerard Washington. Welcome, Chief. Our proclamation tonight reads, whereas Fire Prevention Week is a nationally observed week in the United States to commemorate the Great Chicago Fire, a tragic 1871 disaster. Who's learned about the Great Chicago Fire? Not yet? Okay. That's right, Mrs. O'Leary's cow. A tragic 1871 disaster that killed more than 250 people, left 100,000 homeless, and destroyed more than 17,400 structures, and burned more than 2,000 acres, observed from the Sunday to Saturday, in which October 9th falls. And whereas the first presidential proclamation of the week was made in 1925 by Calvin Coolidge, since then, National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, continues to sponsor the week with a yearly theme, and Fire Prevention Week 2024 is to be observed from October 6th through October 12th. Whereas smoke alarms, make them work for you, is the theme of this year's Fire Prevention Week. And whereas during Fire Prevention Week, we honor our brave firefighters and first responders who risk their lives to protect us every day and reaffirm the importance of fire safety and preparedness. And whereas the City of Vista is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in, working in, and visiting our community, when fires occur, automatic sprinkler systems, fire sprinkler systems, and residential smoke alarms provide necessary and vital warnings to occupants and fire departments so that we can take appropriate action to protect life and liberty. Thus, fire safety knowledge is crucial to the well-being of our citizens. Whereas the Fire Prevention Week of October 6th through the 12th, 2024, and the entire month of October is recognized as Fire Prevention Month, with 4 Vista Fire Station houses open houses scheduled every Saturday in the month of October to engage the community in fire safety education. Now, therefore, I and the members of the Vista City Council do hereby proclaim October 6th through the 12th, 2024, as Fire Prevention Week, and October 2024 as Fire Prevention Month in the City of Vista. And be it further proclaimed that I and the members of the Vista City Council urge all persons to heed the important safety messages of Fire Prevention Week and Month and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Vista Fire Department. Chief, you want to give us a couple of tips for how we can prevent fires at home?
Absolutely. Gerard Washington, your fire chief. Most fires are caused by careless use of smoking materials. So those lighters and matches that you may have, put them out of the reach of young children. And please do not smoke in bed. We have where people smoke in bed and, doesn't reach the ashtray. Also pets. If you have candles, people love using candles, especially during religious holidays. Be careful of pets that may be around those. Many fires have started because of that as well. Have working smoke alarms. Follow the city ordinance when it comes to working smoke alarms. Have an escape plan. Practice your escape plan. And once you're out, please, please, please never go back in. That's what we do. We go in and we get people out. You don't have the training or the equipment that we have, so it's important that you take it seriously. And lastly, have that escape plan and put it on the most used door in your house. This is a trick question, and I'm gonna ask one council member to answer this question, and he should remember this because I said it at school that I attended with him. So your escape plan that you're gonna practice with your family, put it on the most used door in your house. Councilman Green.
The refrigerator door?
The refrigerator door, absolutely. Wait a minute. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you. Good stuff. That's right.
I'm going to add to your good advice by saying everybody should have a fire extinguisher underneath their kitchen counter. How many fires start in the kitchen? Quite a few of them.
Quite a few, yes.
So, and basically, if we can get that fire put out in the room that it starts in, much better chance of saving your house. So it's very, very important. About $50 buys a good fire extinguisher. Every one of you should go home and make sure your parents have a working smoke detectors in the house and a good fire extinguisher. So thanks again, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You want to take a photo with us?
Yes.
All right, our next presentation is one declaring September 2024 as Alta Vista Botanical Gardens' 25th anniversary in the City of Vista. Here to accept this proclamation are Nancy Jones, Ron Holloway, Rusty Dixon, Dave Nichols, Annie Donner, Mary Murphy, Peter Adams, and Jackie Larson. Come on down, would you? All right. Good to see you. All right, good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. Hi there. Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. Hi there. Good to see you. Do you have a name tag? You want to be the official holder of this proclamation? After you shake hands?
Can we do that for
Shake hands.
Nancy?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, of course, of course. Nancy, would you be my piano white here? Oh, Farmer Jones, there you go. All right. She's going to show off that nice proclamation, which reads, whereas the Alta Vista Botanical Gardens 25th anniversary celebration Secret Garden Gala was held at the Gardens September 7th, 2024, with 100 or more in attendance. And the Alta Vista Botanical Gardens was formed in 1998 on 14 acres of City Vista property. Since 2003, the current board has fulfilled the mission of bringing people together, nature and art, at the gardens, and they are open daily for public visits, exercises, classes, field trips, events, and peaceful retreats. Whereas the Alta Vista Botanical Gardens provides an extraordinary sanctuary and respite and refuge and relief from daily cares, the all-volunteer board meets monthly to carry out the business of running the 14-acre gardens on the City of Vista property. The 30 adopted gardeners and many more reliable volunteers provide an invaluable service to keep the gardens growing and beautiful. Whereas the Alta Vista Botanical Gardens provides a haven for the community to experience nature during the 2020 to 2023 pandemic, and a membership has grown to 900 families and individuals. Whereas during the last 15 years, Alta Vista Botanical Gardens and Farmer Jones here have provided 150 low-cost, high-quality monthly, quote, kids in the garden classes, 140 field trip programs. Anybody here been to a field trip at the Botanical Gardens in Vista? A few of you, okay, good. Let's see, Kids in the Gardens. More than 8,000 kids have participated and have learned support and respect for nature and for our environment. Whereas in those 15 years, 11,000 people have attended and volunteered at the free family community-oriented Earth Day and Fall Fun festivals. The Alta Vista Botanical Gardens is dependent upon their ever so popular annual adult fundraising events that include meeting at the garden, mead like a good glass of mead, right? In April and November Fest. Whereas the Vista City Council recognizes Alta Vista Botanical Gardens leadership in environmental stewardship, in April presented at an Earth Day proclamation for demonstrating sustainability, conservation, and keeping our planet healthy. Now, therefore, I and the members of the Vista City Council do hereby celebrate the Alta Vista Botanical Gardens' continued mission of bringing people together, nature and art, and appreciate and recognize the invaluable service of volunteers to provide such an amazing venue for the community to enjoy. And we hereby express our sincere congratulations and proclaim in the City of Vista the month of September 2025 as the Alta Vista Gardens 25th anniversary. All right. Thank you. Very good. All right. Yeah. Want to say a brief word?
Yeah, if I can.
Okay.
How many people have been to the Alta Vista Gardens here? That's great. If you haven't been there, you need to go up there. I've been involved for 25 years with the garden. I'm currently the president. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. And it's made easy by all the wonderful people here tonight that have volunteered. It's much easier running an organization when you have people that step up and take care of business without having to be pushed too hard. So Jackie Larson's here. She's our volunteer chairman. Peter Adams, he's been a volunteer for probably 20 years, I bet. Mary Murphy is in charge of our membership. When she started the job, there was like 150, 200. COVID hit. Now we have 900, almost 1,000 members. So she didn't sign up for that part of it, I'm sure, but she does a great job. Rusty Dixon is our garden manager. She's there on a daily basis, taking care of business. Rusty put together the gala event we had a few weeks ago. Did a wonderful job. It was a fundraiser. We celebrated our 25th anniversary, and her husband Eric is here. He's helped quite a bit too. Annie Don.
Eric, come up, please.
Oh, he's our IT guy.
He's the IT man.
He saves us. Annie Donner's been working in our gift shop for many years and is a volunteer. Thank you for that. And last but not least is this wonderful lady that runs the children's garden and the programs we have monthly. She does a wonderful job, and we're lucky to have her. So, thank you.
That's why why we're all here.
All right. Would you come take a picture with us? Right. We probably got to do roads.
I'm pretty tall. Why don't you come up front?
I can lay down a little league post. Could you help me hand these out? I just feel like you guys might not know. All right. Now we have a very special presentation for our guerreros in acción por un limpio vista. Where is Jovita? I don't see her. Where is she? There she is. All right. Jovita, you want to come on? Bring your group up. You have a group tonight? Yeah, sí, yeah. Todos los guerreros.
I was telling all your friends to come too. Yeah, there we go. There's the real workers right there.
All right. How are you?
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're hiding? Thank you. Thank you for your volunteerism.
You play soccer too? Do you play soccer too? We could all play soccer. That's cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Jovita has a letter of appreciation that we'd like to present to her. On behalf of the City Council, I'm going to read it to you. Esta es una carta de agradecimiento. Esta carta de agradecimiento, I struggle with those longer words, es por su destacado compromiso de 5 años con la eliminación semanal de basura en la comunidad de Townsite y District 1. Su acción voluntaria ha mejorado la salud pública de nuestra comunidad al eliminar miles de libras de basura de nuestras calles y parques, evitando que estos desechos ingresen a nuestras presidias vías fluviales. Estas acciones desinteresadas realmente fomentan la comunidad y ayudan a construir relaciones sólidas con otras personas en nuestra ciudad. Juntos, los guerreros nos muestran cómo ser más resilientes y sostenibles. Nuestra comunidad no sería la misma sin su dedicación semanal a un medio ambiente limpio y saludable. La ciudad de Vista la agradece su voluntariado. Presentado el 24 de septiembre de 2024. And our captain's been there to help on a few occasions. Would you like to say anything? No? Okay. Yeah, come on, come on.
¿Español?
Sí, por favor.
Ok. Bueno, quiero agradecerle a mis compañeras y a unos niños también que se unieron conmigo de la escuela VAPA, y me gustaría invitarlos a todos los que están presentes. Si un día les gustaría ir conmigo a recoger basura, nos reunimos en el Parque Luz Durán de 8:30 a 11 de la mañana. Están invitados para mejorar nuestro medio ambiente. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. I got so excited, I almost forgot to read off all the names that we have here. We'll start out with, we have our captain of Guerreros en Acción, Jovita Serafin. We have also Erlinda Serafin, Brandon Suarez, Obdulia Diaz, Rosa Elvira Diaz Ortega, right. Ramiro Diaz Ortega, Ruben Diaz, Sebastian Diaz, Maria Martinez, Marlene Zamora. All right. Oswaldo David Venegas, Rigoberto Rodriguez Salado, Kevin Morelia, Michelle Orozco, Miguel Santiago. All right. Santiago Martin Sanchez, Drummond Gonzalez, Rubieli Maldonado, Cara Untalan, Captain John Boyce, all right, and Kevin Lee. All right. Muchas gracias por todo. Will you take a photo with us? Una foto, por favor?
For a photo.
Oh, John?
All right, everybody, we're going to come back to order, and we're going to now enter the business portion of our meeting, where we'll ask everybody to maintain their silence in the chamber until they're recognized to speak. And who's got a microphone that's squealing? No, I already gave it back. I don't have any electronics. Everybody turn your... Okay. Just as mysteriously as it came, it left. Okay, very good. All right. Now we're to our oral communications portion of the meeting. Any member of the public may address the council on agency-related matters that are not on tonight's agenda by requesting to speak during this section of the agenda. If you are participating via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 at this time if you would like to speak. The number of speakers heard during this segment will be limited to 10. Any remaining speakers will be heard under the second installation of oral communications. Let's see, do we have any oral communications this evening? We have a few tonight. We'll begin with Joe Hood here in the chamber, and then we'll go to speaker labeled iPhone, and then to Megan Stewart, both on Zoom.
Good evening, Council. Earth's hottest average temperature over the last 500 million years was 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, it's 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Increases and decreases in CO2 have driven all temperature changes. Without dramatic change, temperature could increase by 5 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. Nowhere in 500 million years has temperature changed as rapidly as it is doing now. The Permian extinction 250 million years ago, the worst known, raised temperatures 18 degrees Fahrenheit over 50,000 years due to massive volcanic eruptions. 95% of all life went extinct. 95%. Humans are raising temperatures 5 degrees Fahrenheit in a few decades, caused by our collective volcanoes of power plants, furnaces, factories, and Fords. Raising temperatures is by far the biggest thing humans have ever done. Stopping temperature rise is the most important thing we can do. In 2023, the U.S. had 28 multi-billion-dollar climate losses, more than one every 2 weeks. To date, in 2024, we've had 20 such losses. World-leading scientists say losses, unless we change, will be 18% of global GDP by 2050. That translates into $38 trillion per year. 38 trillion per year. How will our children, our grandchildren, the students in this hall tonight pay for $38 trillion per year? To address our dilemma, one, we need citizens who want solutions. I call upon all Vistans to stand up and demand action. Every council meeting should have a presentation about some desirable action and then a vote about that action. Two, solutions are available, and if implemented, we can have a stable, secure, healthy planet with jobs that can provide satisfying livelihoods. It's past time to act. Please get the urgent button and push it. Carpe diem.
Now we'll go to the speaker on Zoom labeled iPhone.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a parent and a public health educator, and I'm concerned regarding the marijuana products sold in our city that are attractive to children and young adults. Billboard advertising colorful candy-flavored products, retail shops with names depicting characters, and a glut of products packaged as lookalikes to common childhood favorite candies such as Starburst, Skittles, and gummy bears. It has become evident that the marijuana industry is directing its products to young people, hoping to addict them early in life. The California Department of Cannabis Control is aware of this obnoxious marketing technique, and in 2016, they enacted the Medical and Adult Use Cannabis and Regulation Safety Act. The Safety Act prohibits marijuana advertising, marketing, products, packaging, and labeling that is attractive to children. According to the DCC's description of products attractive to children, this would include a great percentage of products being sold on the shelves in our city today. I'd like to request that the City Cannabis Division webpage be updated with information about the Safety Act. Notices should be sent out to all retailers and manufacturers describing clear guidelines regarding the removal of products from shelves. I believe the city should take the initiative in enforcing any requirements from the DCC. Businesses should be subject to citations and fines, license suspensions, license denial, and license revocation. Please consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Megan Stewart.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Franklin and council members. As a youth advocate and someone with experience in social work, I was very happy to hear of Governor Newsom's recent proposal for stricter regulations on hemp products. The governor's emergency regulations aim to protect all Californians, particularly our youth, from dangerous and unregulated products containing THC. The proposed rules would ban any detectable amount of THC in consumable hemp products and raise the purchasing age to 21. As we know, children and adolescents are at a higher risk when exposed to intoxicating substances, especially when these products are readily available in grocery stores, gas stations, and near schools. Governor Newsom's proposed measures address this issue by ensuring that intoxicating hemp products do not slip through the cracks of regulation, as we have seen happen in other states. Currently, hemp products are subject to far less scrutiny than marijuana products, despite their potential to do significant harm. By closing regulatory loopholes, these new rules can help prevent dangerous, untested hemp products from reaching not only our youth, but also adults and seniors who purchase these products, which are causing long-term cognitive and health issues. The main goal of the governor's proposal is to keep harmful, unregulated substances out of the hands of the most vulnerable. I would like the council to consider supporting these efforts as a way to ensure that Vista continues to protect the health and well-being of all of its citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Judy Strang.
Good evening, Mayor Franklin and Vista City Council. I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting this morning to share my support on one of their agenda items, and I wanted to tell you about it tonight. It was agenda item 12, and it's the county's effort to address what they consider a behavioral health crisis for our young people. And they talk about it being well documented, and they list all of the advisories, the U.S. Surgeon General, CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Psychological Association, etc., and the research that's been coming out on behalf of our young people. And they want to put into play a more comprehensive continuation of care service for our young people. And as part of it, they want to really shed a spotlight on prevention. What was shared this morning was some information regarding the recent research from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. And it pointed out that for those over the age of 12 that had begun marijuana use, 55% of them had begun it before the age of 21. This is a very scary situation for those of us who work on behalf of our young people. And they go on to say when youth use begins before the age of 21, it's more likely to have a mental health impact upon our young people. So I bring to you my concern that what we advertise in our cities and what we sell on our shelves at marijuana storefronts in Vista are attractive to young people, and perhaps a more clear message regarding that a no use message for those under the age of 21 should be put in place now that we have such clear information that 55% of the people starting marijuana use are under the age of 21. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That will conclude the opportunity for public comment this evening. We'll now go to our consent calendar. And the recommendations on the consent calendar will be enacted in one motion. Unless an item is removed from the calendar, any member of the public may remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to the clerk secretary by using the raise their hand feature on Zoom or pressing *9. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the calendar. We have 4 consent items this evening. Now recognize Deputy Mayor Katie Melendez.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Councilmember Contreras.
I second.
We have a motion, a second. Seeing no comments, please cast your votes. Consent calendar is adopted unanimously. We have two public hearings this evening. The first, PH1, is regarding the 2023-2024 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. We will now open the public hearing. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature or by pressing *9 or by submitting a request to speak card here at the dais. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our Homelessness Service Manager, Jonathan Lung, will introduce this item.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, City Council members. This public hearing provides the City Council and community members an opportunity to provide comments and feedback on the city's Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER. Along with me tonight is Johanna Knief, Housing and Homeless Services Staff Assistant, who will provide the summary of the 2023-24 program year accomplishments. The city receives annual Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. The objective of CDBG funds are to promote the development of viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment through expanding economic opportunities, principally for persons of low and moderate income. CDBG regulations require grantees, such as the City of Vista, to submit a CAPER within 90 days of the close of each program year, to provide HUD with necessary information to assess each grantee's ability to carry out its programs in compliance with applicable regulations and requirements. The CAPER also provides information necessary for HUD to report to Congress and provide grantees with an opportunity to describe its program achievements to its residents. The CAPER presented tonight will summarize the accomplishments of Vista's CDBG program year of July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, which Ms. Knief will now provide.
Good evening. The CAPER provides the city an opportunity to evaluate its overall progress in carrying out its priorities and specific objectives. These include providing emergency shelter, crime and delinquency prevention programs, providing support services for seniors, health services including mental health, providing emergency assistance, and improvements to community parks, public facilities, and infrastructure. Congress provided $5 billion in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, for the CDBG program to states, metropolitan cities, urban counties, and insular areas to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. These include public service activities, housing-related activities, activities to acquire real property, economic development activities, and general administrative and planning activities. In total, $915,956.19 in CDBG funds were spent in program year 23-24, supporting public service providers, program administration, fair housing services, and capital improvements. The city received supplemental funding through the CARES Act that supported residents through social services offered through various nonprofit service providers for programs that prepare, prevent, and respond to coronavirus. In program year 23-24, a total of 21,882 Vista residents received new or improved access to CDBG benefits. This includes 62 individuals for fair housing, 8,529 for public services, 828 for coronavirus aid, and 12,463 for community improvement projects. Additionally, the City of Vista funded community improvement projects, including senior center facility improvements and sidewalk improvements along Avenida de Benito Juarez. HUD requires data collection and reporting on race and ethnicity. Demographically, the race and ethnicities of persons assisted generally reflected the diversity of Vista. Area median income, or AMI, is the household income for the median household in a region. AMI highlights the need for programs or services within a given community and is used to determine eligibility for CDBG funds. The objective of CDBG is to assist individuals at 80% AMI or less. Per HUD guidelines, a 15-day public review period is required to provide the community an opportunity to review the city draft 23 through 2024 CAPER. The CAPER has been available for public review on the city's website and in the city clerk's office since September 9th, 2024, and no public comments have been received so far. Any comments tonight will be incorporated into the final draft of the CAPER. Thank you, and we are now open to questions.
Thank you for this presentation. I don't have many questions, but I'm glad to see that we're compliant with the use of these funds and we've been able to utilize them to serve our community. I really appreciate the inclusion of the demographics information and the communities that we've served. And I know that we will continue to do good work with these funds as we receive them. So with that, I would go ahead and move to close the public hearing and accept staff's recommendation for this item.
I'll second that, and seeing no other requests to speak, please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Lung and Ms. Knief. That'll bring us to our second public hearing regarding Program 8, sites used in previous planning period housing elements of the 2021 to 2029 Housing Element Plan. The public hearing is now open. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature or by pressing *9 on their phone or by submitting a request to speak card here at the dais. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Our Community Development Director, Joe Vaca, will introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor Frank.
Oh, turn your microphone back on.
Thank you. How's that?
Better.
That's better. Thank you, Mayor Franklin and members of the City Council. So tonight, Patsy Chow, the Assistant Community Development Director, will be presenting the analysis and agenda item.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Mayor Franklin, council members. Patsy Chow, Assistant Director, Community Development Department. Happy to be here this evening to present this item before you tonight, which is concerning Program 8 in our housing element. So just to give you a little bit of background on this, to put things in perspective, our 6-cycle housing element that covers years 2021 through 2029 was adopted by City Council and then certified by State Department of Housing and Community Development on September 7th, 2022. In the housing element, there is a housing plan, which basically identifies the city's housing goals, the policies, all the implementing programs. There are a total of 27 housing programs in the housing element that need to be implemented as part of the housing element, and they all have different objectives, varied timeframes. One of these programs is Program 8. And in Program 8, sites that were used in previous planning periods for previous housing element cycles, they're identified as part of our 6-cycle housing element in order for us to be able to meet our regional housing needs assessment allocation, also known as our RHNA allocation for VISTA. So with that, an important thing to note here about Program 8 is that the city can only count the non-vacant sites that were included in one previous housing element inventory, so basically the 5th cycle, and as well as vacant sites that were included in 2 previous housing element cycles, so basically the 4th and the 5th cycle, if in fact the sites are subject to a rezone program where it allows the affordable housing development to occur by right. And what by right means here is the fact that they would be able to go straight to a building permit process, which we identify as being a ministerial process, rather than a discretionary process, meaning that would go through a public hearing process. So what that means is that it really shortens the time frame where a project gets approved by the city, because then essentially they're going through basically a plan check, a building permit, rather than having to go through a series of public hearings, and after review by staff, they're essentially submitting construction documents. And that basically puts that on a much faster track for purposes of review, approval, and then obviously the construction of the project. But in order to do that and to allow for this by right development, we required to have an amendment of our Vista Development Code so that we can have that by right approval as required by state law for these eligible housing development projects. And in doing so, we're ensuring compliance with our 6-cycle housing element. So on this map, I know it's quite small, but essentially the areas that are pink in the middle of our city, identified here, are the non-vacant sites that are included in one previous housing element inventory, or basically our 5th cycle. And again, subject to a rezone program that would allow affordable housing development by right, we're able to count these towards our arena allocation and our obligations under the 6-cycle housing element. And in here on this map, the green areas that are kind of dispersed throughout the city identify the vacant sites that are included in 2 previous housing element cycles, so the 4th and the 5th cycle, and again, subject to by right affordable housing development so that we can continue to count them towards our RHNA allocation. As part of the Program 8, one of the stipulations is that at least 20% of the total number of housing units that are in the project are actually proposed to be available at lower income levels. So we're talking at 80% or less of the area median income in order to be an affordable rent or affordable housing cost as applicable. So prior to submission of what we call it a zoning clearance application, which is part of a ministerial review, staff would ask the applicant to go through a pre-application review where we identify all the multidisciplinary review team to provide project comments, to discuss any project components, requirements, issues that need to be addressed early on before they submit for an actual building permit. Then a zoning clearance application will be then reviewed by our community development director, Joe Vaca, or a designee for making sure that the project is in fact meeting the objective standards as those are specified in the general plan, any applicable specific plans or zoning code, objective design review guidelines, anything that would give us the ability to review the project and make sure that it still meets all of our requirements and regulations in place. Then our community development director or designee then ministerially would issue that zoning clearance and saying that the application in fact complies with all the standards. And we would also, on top of that, have a regulatory agreement in place that would be recorded and in a form that approved by the city attorney, obviously, to make sure that the project remains affordable for a period of 45 years if it's privately financed, or 55 years if it's publicly financed. We're mimicking the same logic as when we do density bonus projects, which follows as 45 years, 55 years. So we're not trying to introduce different terms to make it confusing. We're trying to keep it the same, so it's very consistent throughout. As far as CEQA review, the proposed code amendment is actually covered by the negative declaration document that was prepared for the 6-cycle housing element, previously approved by the council in June of 2021. So we didn't have to do any additional work on that. And on September 3rd, this month, the Planning Commission actually recommended approval of the ordinance that's adding the chapter 18.98 that talks about this right approval. It was unanimously approved at that meeting. And with that, the staff's recommendation tonight is for the City Council then to adopt and approve an ordinance that's adding chapter 18.98 to the Vista Development Code to allow for this by right approval to ensure compliance with our 6-cycle housing element. The next steps, assuming council's approval tonight, is to submit the approved ordinance to State Department of Housing and Community Development as our proof of continued commitment in pursuing and fulfilling implementing all the different programs in our housing element. We're also looking to, and I started talking with our GIS staff about updating our zoning map. So we identify all these vacant sites, these non-vacant sites on our zoning map as a zoning layer so that they'll be, at the click of a button, be able to see where these sites are. It'll be publicly accessible on our website. And on top of that, I've been talking to our GIS staff about the fact that because does not have a public notice for these projects because, again, it's going to go through a ministerial project, review through a building plan check. There's no formal noticing of a hearing or anything that would notify the public of these projects coming online. So we're looking into actually having these future development projects on these sites be placed on our city's interactive map of planning projects throughout the city, which is already, a wonderful tool that's available on our website right now, publicly accessible. And then we will be adding these projects on there so that people can understand where these projects are taking place. And that would be one way to be informed and be, a participant in the process and knowing where these projects are going to be happening on these particular sites. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
I've got a question for you, Ms. Chow. Now, we've been meeting our RHNA allocation, arena allocation for, I think, all the years that I've served on this council. Do you think that if we don't adopt this policy, that there's a danger that we will not be able to comply with our arena allocation?
Right now, yes, it would be something that this is obviously in the housing element right now. It is expected of us from HCD that we would fulfill this promise to make this favorable as far as us meeting and continue to meeting our obligations. And remember that the RENA allocation is a planning expectation where we identify the sites to be able to meet our housing obligation. I mean, right now, we're not developers. The city, we're not in the business of developing, but obviously there's the expectation that we're going to be producing the housing. And certainly by having this program 8, by having this go faster, is going to help us move production faster in meeting our obligations.
My question would be, how many units do we have, or how many units do we have planned? In other words, what's our current RENA allocation? And we're meeting it and exceeding it by how many units?
So right now, our RENA allocation for 2021-29 is 2,561 units altogether. And right now, if I actually looked at the annual progress reports for the past 5 years, but if I pulled it up by 2021, which is the beginning of the cycle, to 2022, 2023, we have actually produced a total of 499 permits that were actually issued. Actually, more than that was actually applied for, but I'm giving you a number of actually building permits issued. So 499 out of the 2,561 is what we have accomplished so far since 2021 through 2023.
And the 2,561 is the amount that we're required to be zoned for.
Correct.
Is the amount.
Not an amount that we're required to build.
Exactly, absolutely.
So we were required to provide zoning for 2,561. How many did we provide zoning for?
We actually have everything in place because, as you recall, we didn't have to rezone or general plan amendment of anything. We actually have everything in our inventory that meets the 2,561 as shown. We have the proper, in other words, we have the proper amount of land that's zoned to meet that requirement.
But do we know what our excess is? Because obviously we're probably not meeting it number for number, so we probably have one or more than is required by the allocation. Do we know what that number is, or is that something you had to get back to me on?
No, of course we have more than that. I mean, because obviously.
So how many, do you know the number?
I would have to go back to my notes on that one.
You can get back to me on that. Do you have a guess? Are we 20% over, 10% over?
As far as what we are currently having throughout our city, yeah, Joe can actually.
So we do have a buffer, and we do exceed, based on the land use plan, we do exceed the number of planned units to meet the RENA capacity with some excess buffer, but we don't have the exact number of that amount that would qualify in that buffer, so we can get back to you on that.
The reason I ask is because ostensibly this is a tool to help us, as you introduced it, maintain our compliance with our allocation. And maybe I'm not listening carefully enough, but if that's the primary goal, I think this council's done some great work by being involved in the discretionary approval of some of these projects. And I think we've demonstrated a willingness to provide early design review and to really look innovatively. And I think actually we've done some really good work on our, what I like to call them direct subsidy projects, where we're providing some benefit to the project. And we provided some great input. I know that not all of these projects are ones that we would be providing a subsidy for, but what is being asked for is to diminish the authority and power of the council and therefore of the people to review and approve these projects, which is something that the citizens of Vista have long enjoyed that prerogative, and the council has enjoyed that prerogative to discuss these projects and their impact on our housing needs and also on surrounding neighbors, but just to participate in the process. So can you explain, other than providing the RHNA, so you said we have a buffer and we've not really had a problem meeting our allocation. What other considerations would impel us to go to ministerial approval?
So first of all, I agree with you, Mayor. I think the city council's done an amazing job with market rate and affordable housing in the community, and especially with community engagement. We are essentially handcuffed by state law that since we utilized prior properties of previous land inventories for the fifth, and even before that, the fourth cycle housing elements, and then they were carried over into the sixth cycle, based on state law, we must go through this code amendment so that any of those properties, if a developer came to the city and they included a minimum of 20% lower income units, we have to, by state law, approve that project by right. And this code amendment is to basically enact state law at the direction of HCD, which we must do to comply with the law to keep our housing elements certified.
So if we don't, then we would not continue to be able to use those zoned properties in our housing element for compliance with our RENA allocation.
Correct. And furthermore, we could then potentially have a threat of having our housing element decertified. And instead of being on an 8-year cycle, could be subjected to a 4-year cycle, which doubles the amount of work and the amount of expense we have to go through to try to get housing elements certified then every 4 years. And again, that's all at the purview of HCD. But this is state law. We must comply. And we've been contacted by HCD, and we're following up on the program in the adopted housing element that was certified by.
When you say we must comply, you mean we must comply or we lose access to these properties to meet our RENA allocation, is that right?
And we potentially lose certification of our housing element.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Councilmember Green.
City Manager Conlon, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add some perspective there. The mayor is correct. We are diminishing our authority to review these projects, but that's not something the staff is recommending. It's something that the state is telling us we have to do.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you so much. First of all, Patsy Chow, thank you so much for this report. You are amazing. Every time I walk by your office, I can barely see you because they have so many projects stacked up on your desk. So it's good to see you with only a few pieces of paper in front of you today. That's great. Having 27 housing programs as part of our housing element has to be a lot to juggle. I don't understand all 27 of them, but I appreciate you explaining element number 8. It looked to me, and just a couple questions, the affordable by right properties that were on the pink map were non-vacant properties. Now, are those currently multi-unit properties, single-family resident properties? Is it a mixture of what type of properties they are as far as commercial mixed use? When we say non-vacant lots, what am I looking at? Is it like a goulash of properties?
So basically, non-vacant, underutilized. So there could be a small building not developed to its full potential, could be mostly a parking lot, and most of these areas are concentrated in our downtown.
Okay.
So our downtown area, which mostly comprises of mixed use.
Yeah, which is great, and that's where we really want to concentrate our affordable housing element. The one thing that really caught my eye was the requirements in order to do this. Is although it is the program 8, and we have to go ahead and do it. It looked like from your slide, number 1, they have to be at least 20% affordable housing within the element in order to check the box of program 8. Correct? Question I have is, are those 20% units at the lowest threshold of the AMI? Is it 60% or less of the AMI?
So lower income, it's 80% of
80% or
AMI,
less.
and below.
Okay, so it's got to be below 80. I just want to make sure we're not doing any of the 120% affordable housing, which, as you know, the AMI is like 110 grand a year. So 120% of that, you're a baller getting affordable housing. So I like making sure that affordable housing is really for people who need it from a budgetary standpoint. So I think that's good. I do understand now what the pink map is and what the green map is. It also looked like by enacting this program, the CEQA guidelines are already done. So there was one neg deck report done for the entire general plan, basically, that covers all of the zoning here. So if somebody was to come in and say, hey, I want to build a project by right, Project 8, there's no CEQA guidelines, no environmental restrictions. They're a green light on all of these parcels once we make that change, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is exactly right.
Okay, so this is good to expedite production of affordable housing. It does, I don't want to use the word, suck or whatever, but it definitely does that they want to take the city's power away. But at the same token, a lot of banter goes on sometimes at the council level where at the end of the day, we end up building the housing anyways. So I feel like by requiring the 20% overlay, and then also prior to submission of the zoning clearance application, there is a no-fee pre-application review with a multidisciplinary city review team to discuss the project. I would assume as a staff, you'd be able to commit to the council that in any preliminary review that comes in within our districts, you would notify us. And perhaps we would make sure that we're a part of that multidisciplinary city review team, even though we're not necessarily having, the authority to add restrictions. We might have a different perspective than our planning and engineering department. So I think that anything that goes through this review, if we could just maybe make a note to have a, council person part of it, that'd be great as well.
We can absolutely do that, but I want to make sure that you understand that our discretion is extremely limited.
The big thing is notifying us as council people.
Yeah, we can
because,
do that.
Before you break ground on a property that's 2 doors down that used to be a vacant, barber shop, and it's now going to be a 6-story apartment complex, and we can't say anything about it, the council person should at least be able to notify the community. So that's the thing. The other question that I had, which I think is a big question, what is the minimum amount of units required in order to qualify for a Project 8 exemption?
It basically will follow whatever the zone allows and whatever the project proponent decides at that point. And they may decide to use density bonus. But there is not going to be, essentially, it's what is the use that is allowing, the zoning that's allowing, whether they're going to try to exceed that and introduce more units.
Okay, so whether it's a single-family development where the minimum lot size is whatever, whether we do the tiny lots or whatever, they could do that, or if it's a big sprawling estate development per se, they still have to meet it. So what I was trying to figure out is, hey, I don't want somebody coming in building a bunch of fourplexes and maybe having, 1 unit. I want to make sure that we're actually building housing, and if you only are building a fourplex, technically 20% would it exceed 20%. So could they pay an in lieu fee? Like, would any developer in this program be able to pay an in lieu fee in order to not build this affordable housing, or is it required to be built per the state of California?
We would require the minimum 20% of the units to be built.
No in lieu fee is acceptable.
No.
And if they want to pay an in lieu fee, it's got to go through the whole planning process and zoning process?
Yes, it would be a traditional entitlement review.
Okay. And I'd like to ask the city manager, is there a way to make a minimum amount of units for this? Because they could build a duplex, they could build a fourplex, they build a sixplex. Like, how do you make one single family residence? You know what I mean? It's kind of, go ahead.
Well, I think as Ms. Chow indicated, it's per the zoning. So any size property is going to be zoned to allow a certain number of units. And based on the size of the property and the zoning, that's your number of units.
All right. So it'll be a case-by-case basis.
People that come in the door aren't going to want to build 1 unit on a lot that allows 20 units. They're going to want to build 20
I would hope
units.
not.
So all these properties qualify for higher density or their size to allow multiple units.
That's what I wanted to make sure of. So they're all qualifying to build 10 plus units on each one of these properties that's zoned this way. So it is an actual big development. Okay, cool. Let me just make sure. GIS staff, no public notice. I love the idea of updating the zoning map. So that zoning map's a big thing. It's going to be a great tool for developers and also a great tool for our citizens. So maybe you let them know, hey, citizens, tonight we just passed a new zoning that allows developers to come in and build this high of buildings by right, maybe in your neighborhood. Click this map today to see if you can have an apartment complex next door to your house. I think it'd get a little bit of action. So I think that's a great idea. Number of units, housing element, affordable. Half woman, half amazing. Patsy Chow, thank you. Joe Vaca, appreciate your work on this. I would like to hear from my council members. Hopefully they will move to close the public hearing and accept your resignation. So,
Thank
no,
you
I'd
very
like
much.
the deputy mayor too.
If we could just also get back really quickly to the original question from the mayor, we have the answer on the number of units that exceed the planned RENA.
So, yeah, thank you, Joe. So Mayor Franklin, and council members, I was just looking back on my notes here that I had. So I was doing the quick math here in terms of how many remaining RENA units to provide that buffer, and we have 328 units. There's additional buffer that we have to work, that we can't work with.
And how many units would we potentially lose if we didn't adopt this policy?
How many units would go, I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand your
Because
question.
we would lose units that we're presently able to include. I'm just curious what the number would be.
The sites here we wouldn't lose the sites.
We wouldn't
Our
overcount them
housing
towards.
element. Our housing element would be decertified, which all of this would go away, and we would be in violation of state law. That's the implication here.
Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you for the discussion. I was hoping I could have seconded a motion, but it seems like we're on track. So my understanding is that this is not a density bonus program, but similar to a density bonus program, these lots would be allowed to go through a streamlined process if they build 20% affordable. Is that
Yes,
Correct.
that's correct.
okay? Yeah, so that, if we get into compliance with state requirements and we can prevent having to go back to the state to be approved for our housing element, I think that that would save us a lot of time and money. And then in addition to being in compliance with the state guidelines, I think that there is a local benefit to this type of program. And I think I asked this question to you, City Manager, when we reviewed this item, but I wasn't sure if there was a specific update that we might be able to share with the council. But because the developer doesn't have to go through a long discretionary process, right? They can build by right, and they can, really go from having a plan to being approved to putting bricks down. How much money would the developer save by not having to go through a discretionary process?
So including the CEQA review process?
Yeah, and CEQA
I think
as
that
well.
it's probably reasonable to say a couple $100,000.
Could you put it into like a percentage, right? Like,
So of the pro forma, it's probably 15% or 20% of a
okay,
project.
so for these properties, the developer will be able to save 15% on the production of this housing,
Yes.
which we hope would translate back to the community. Could, go back into someone else's pocket. We don't know that. We have no regulation for that. But it is good to know that there is a potential cost savings, which could be passed back to the community. So I would go ahead and just make sure I know what motion that you're looking for, that we could go ahead and please close the public hearing and to introduce and adopt City Council Ordinance 2024 adding 18.98 to the Vista Development Code regarding by right approval to ensure compliance with the adopted six-cycle housing element through 2029 as required by state law. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. Obviously, this is something that we have no choice to do. And can you just highlight for us, City Manager, because I know a few cities in our region have not had a compliant housing element. What would that do to Vista? What are the repercussions?
If we don't adopt this, we will likely be the subject of HCD's new enforcement arm, and they'll come in and they'll take us to court and force us to make these adjustments to our housing element. That's what has happened in other cities.
And what's the potential cost of that?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend ourselves, plus the cost to redo the plan and the CEQA. So it could be,
Plus we'll lose.
$500,000 to $1 million. Yeah, there's no city that's been successful challenging HCD.
Great. Okay. I do have a question, though, regarding, I don't know if it's something that we can add to this process in the municipal code. I don't like that there's zero notification. I like when I see those big yellow boards and I can see what is coming down and what's going to be in that vacant lot. Is there any way to add that?
I don't think there's any restriction in state law to posting a notice on the site if an application is submitted.
I think we
so
absolutely need to
could
do
still
that. Yeah, I think we.
We just can't send notice out to the neighbors.
Right. Yeah, I think it would be helpful just to understand what's going to happen in that lot. But yeah, I'm not sure how my council feels about it. I assume that we all would like to have that type of notification on the lot, especially if there's no legal issue with it. I think there might, is there any place in the municipal code where we have to change the language to add that? 'Cause I thought I saw something, but I can't find it anymore.
What I would suggest is we leave the ordinance as is, because we have to follow the state law and we're under some time restrictions, but we would enact it as a staff policy, administrative policy, and adopt it in the economic development.
Awesome. Okay. So I appreciate that. And so these projects would tier off of the MND that was provided, and that's through 2029, right? So if there was, does there have to be like an update to that after 2029?
Actually, the by right law under state law does not define these as projects for CEQA, so they aren't subject to CEQA.
Oh, okay.
So the neg deck is for the code amendment because the code amendment is required per the housing element, and the neg deck was for the housing element, and it analyzed that. So we don't have to do any CEQA for the code amendment. But in future, with these types of developments, they're not quote-unquote projects under state law's definitions, hence the by right approval, so they don't need to go through CEQA.
Okay. And what's the timeline for this to be, state council approves this for the GIS to be updated? One of my favorite tools that we have.
It's actually in process right now. So the maps that were attached to the agenda report are already the draft GIS maps. And so there's some very fine tweaking that we're doing just to make sure it's 100% accurate. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, in that case, I'll go ahead and second the motion on the floor. Thank you so much.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Yeah, thank you to the council for all your comments. Actually, all of my questions have been answered. In lieu fees, maintaining compliance, local control. I love the zoning maps as well. The sooner we can get those updated so the public can be aware of them, awesome stuff. I did want to ask if any cities by chance, because I know this is adopted statewide, that we've seen an increase in affordable housing units available to communities based on the housing elements that have been adopted.
No, a lot of cities haven't enacted this yet, quite honestly. In my prior jurisdiction, we were required to do this same zoning code amendment prior to getting our housing element certified. But we had far fewer sites, and I don't think they've seen any fruits come out of that yet. But we do think in Vista that there are some opportunities, and we do think that there would be some capacity for this to work. And it'd be similar to the Santa Fe Senior Apartment Project on Santa Fe.
Yeah,
so we look at this as a very real possibility.
I see tremendous opportunity with it. I just wish there were a little bit more incentives to try and motivate some developers to try and enact on these housing elements. So Patsy and Joe, thank you so much for the presentation and the information. I really appreciate all your hard work.
So how many cities do you think in California of the 120 charter cities and other, what do we have, 400 cities in California? How many have enacted this? Do the general law cities need to enact this, or just the charter cities?
All cities. Definitely general
Yeah,
law.
so
but I think all
like I heard you indicate we're on the leading edge.
I think we're on probably the upper half. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's probably 40% of the cities that haven't done this yet or are in process.
Let me clarify though, Mayor, we are a region amongst multiple regions in the state, and HCD plucks them off one by one. And so the housing element cycles are different for all the regions. So we're in the front end because we're in the front end of the cities that are being reviewed by the state.
I understand. I just want to point out that, what's the purpose of having local government but to make these decisions? Sacramento has been taking the prerogative of the people of Vista away from them to make decisions about the housing and projects that affect their community. So, the question is, and by the way, you have no right, for those of you who are listening, you have no right to appear before and speak in front of your state legislators. None whatsoever. You have an absolute right under the law made by the state legislature, who won't give you the right to speak in front of them. You have a right and a privilege to come speak here in front of your city council. You can come 10 minutes down the road and appear in front of your city council in an evening meeting, whereas you'd have to fly to Sacramento to even listen to the proceedings of the assembly. And then when you get there, they will not guarantee you the right to speak in front of them. So I believe that government that is closest to the people governs best. And I think it's important for this young generation that's here today to think about the fact that every time in Sacramento, they want to take the powers of your local city away, what they're really doing is taking your powers away. Because when you don't like the law, or when you don't like the policies being enacted, or a project or the outcome of some governmental decision, you have to ask yourself, how do you as a citizen have the ability to impact that decision? If you come to your local city council meeting, if as many students are here tonight, if that was the number of citizens who gathered in opposition to or in support of some kind of a project, that would probably mean a great deal to the members of this council and likely would impact our thinking and our outcome of our decisions, because we care a great deal about what the people have to say. So I understand what you're telling us, that we have to do this. I still don't like it, and I want to make the public aware that not the rights of the council, the rights of the people to their own self-determination are being taken away by a government that, and a group of people in Sacramento that think that they're smarter and know better than you do. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. I voted no on that so that people could ask me later why I did, so I can tell them why it made me angry. With that, we'll go on to our first discussion item tonight, which is regarding Treasury operations, our CPI and COLA comparison, general fund reserve policy modification, and the Treasurer's cash report for the month ending June 30th, 2024. If any members of the public wish to speak on this item, they may indicate so by using the raise their hand feature, by pressing *9, or by submitting a request to speak card. Speakers will be called upon after the presentation. Finance Director Mike Silvio will introduce the item. Oh, yeah, our students have met the 1 hour mark, so you're all welcome to quietly, please, and expeditiously and safely make your way not out of the chambers, but outside, please. Carry your conversations outside the building. We can hear you when you're out in the lobby area, so please go ahead and take your conversations outside. It's a beautiful night out tonight, warm weather. I wish I was out there with you enjoying it. I'd like to be in my backyard right now. It would be wonderful. I lost the council member. What happened?
He said you could leave. He left it.
Oh, yeah. All right. We'll take a 60-second recess here. Did we get 1,000 parallel universes for tonight's conversation? All right, next time. I'll let you live that down one day. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in, Mr. Sylvia.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Before I get started, I also wanted to introduce Mike Kronbetter. He's one of our managers we work with at PFM. He's joining us via Zoom this evening, just in case there's a question specific to PFM that is a bit outside of my scope. Item D1 will provide an overview of the city's treasury and investment operations, an update on the CPI versus COLA item that we spoke about last spring per council's request. A couple of staff recommended updates to the City Council Policy 200-19, which is our year-end use of fund balance policy, AKA our reserve policy, and then receipt and filing of the June 2024 Treasurer's Cash Report. So first, regarding the Treasury operations, the Government Finance Officers Association provides 3 goals for local government investing. And in order of priority, safety, which is preservation of capital, obviously. Liquidity, it really doesn't matter if you have a lot of great investments. If the funds aren't available, we need to pay bills. Also, yield. Every investor wants to get a return that's equal to or greater than a benchmark target, which we'll talk about the city's benchmark in just a minute. The California Government Code also provides additional limitations for California municipalities, and then the city's own investment policy further limits and defines allowable investments of the city's funds. And I will say in prior investment committee meetings, we have had questions about Bitcoin and buying gold bars and oil speculation. Those are all not allowed for California municipalities, although there are other states that allow Bitcoin investment that it doesn't go well because there's wild
How
fluctuations.
about those NFTs? Can we get one of those?
No.
Not serious, not serious.
It is critical, though, in all seriousness, to make sure that we do have security of the city's funds. You know, we're talking about a large portfolio here, and there is ongoing oversight by multiple parties, obviously, multiple city staff members, PFM as the city's investment advisor, and I had already mentioned the Investment Advisory Committee. It's a 4-member citizen-led committee that has been great in providing recommendations and advisory activities to city staff. In addition, one of their recommendations that's been great since I've been here is biweekly calls with PFM to review trades, also upcoming investment strategy. That's really been key. The Investment Advisory Committee does meet biannually. And again, they provide that advisory oversight and recommendations to staff. And then staff provides a monthly treasurer's cash report to council, as well as annual updates to the investment policy. And I should add on the monthly treasurer's cash reports, the state requires them quarterly, but frankly, I like providing them monthly because it helps us keep track of things, and it provides not only council, but all of the stakeholders for the city a more timely update as far as what the state's investment standings are. And so the investment universe, only one, Mayor. But there, as I mentioned, there's a broad universe of investments, and we are very limited by the California Government Code. The list of allowable investments are shown here, and this is actually the last page of our current investment policy, this snippet. Primarily, the city invests in U.S. Treasuries and federal agencies, and we'll see the breakdown here in a later slide. The other instruments that we see here, typically there's investments in those categories when there's an appreciable spread that makes them more attractive than treasuries or comparable agencies. Staff does also utilize an overnight investment repository program. We have 3 short-term investment funding options. They're shown here. And staff frequently analyzes these 3 investment options to seek the best return. Since summer of 2022, CAMP, or the California Asset Management Program, has been by far the most advantageous one, and that is because its duration is much shorter than the other 2, meaning when you're in a market of increasing rates, which we have been in up until last week with the Federal Reserve's activity, you get an investment option that's more positively, moving with the rates, whereas the other two with their longer duration move more slowly. So as we move forward, we will shift more towards LAIF, the Local Agency Investment Fund, and also possibly San Diego County's investment pool. We'll make those comparisons. And as I like to tell my friends at camp, consistent with Jerry Maguire, it ain't show friends, it's show business. Even though we enjoy a great relationship with them, we are going to seek the best return overnight. And I'm happy to report that over the last couple of years, it's been very successful. In the just completed fiscal year in 23-24, city staff was able to earn $3.9 million with the overnight investing in the camp program, which is highly unusual, but I think as probably all of you know, we've had an inverted yield curve for the last couple of years plus, and so we've taken advantage of that inverted yield curve and utilized that best overnight option. Even the year before, in 22-23, we were able to earn $2.3 million in camp. So a couple of really good years. I don't expect that to continue, at least at that rate, because we are seeing the curve beginning to normalize. Excuse me. Currently, camp's yielding about 5.25. LAIF is at 4.6, and the San Diego County investment pool, it's a little bit dated. The Sand of July is 3.6. So there's a pretty good spread between those three. The managed portion of the portfolio is actually, that's the piece PFM Asset Management does. They guide our intermediate to longer term investment decisions, mostly of the 1 to 5 year variety. To protect the city's funds and all the cash investments in the managed portfolio, they're held by the city's third-party custodian, BNY, Bank of New York. All the trades are conducted on a delivery versus payment basis consistent with investment best practices. The portfolio is actively managed to enhance its long-term performance, and to evaluate the management of the city's portfolio performance, it's measured against a total return benchmark along with a fiscal year earnings target. And I'm happy to report again that even though we've had a very volatile financial market over the last 4 or 5 years, the portfolio has outperformed its benchmark, which is the 1 to 5 year Bank of America Merrill Lynch U.S. Treasury Index. As I mentioned before, we hold those biweekly calls, and it really helps with staying tuned up with the managed portfolio. We did, like every investor, with how quickly the Federal Reserve increased rates, it created a lot of unrealized losses. And I appreciated Councilmember Contreras asked me about that a while back. It gave me confirmation that my financial reports are being read, which is great. But at one point last year, we had $16 million in unrealized losses, which is it's a big number. And so the question was really great to get, and I was happy to let her know that those losses have largely remained unrealized unless they are strategically realized. And we see in this current slide, this is an example where we did realize a small bit of a loss, but it was very strategic. We had a Bank of America corporate note that was purchased in the fall of 2020 and was yielding 81 basis points and annual earnings of about $15,000, which frankly at the time we were doing cartwheels over because there were European bonds that actually had negative yields. So getting 81 basis points seemed like a bonanza at the time, but you fast forward a couple of years after the Federal Reserve realized that inflation was not transitory, much to the chagrin of Chairman Powell. I think that'll be the worst word in his vocabulary for the rest of his life. But what we did here was replaced or sold this investment a little bit early. We did realize a loss of $18,000 as well as an opportunity cost of the annual earnings of $15,000, but bought another Bank of America corporate note that yielded better than 5.5% in annual earnings of $101,000 a year. So effectively, we realized a small loss, but net over that, inside of that fiscal period, it was a net positive. And so I thought that's really important that our trader at PFM be recognized for this kind of strategy, because it doesn't seem like interest rates went up a ton. nominally, I mean, it went from 0.25% to 5.5%, and now it's down at 5%. But when you think about the percentage change, it's astronomical, and it's shown in the decreased value, market value of the bonds in our portfolio, and it's the big reason why we had that $16 million unrealized loss. So let's see. I also wanted to mention the work they've done this year did earn, in addition to the $3.9 million that I mentioned, their work yielded $4.6 million in investment earnings. And these numbers I'm giving you, that's for the entire portfolio, not just the general fund. The general fund's portion is about $3.9 million of that total $8.5 million. So still a good year, but I wanted to clarify that didn't all end up in the general fund. Before I shift to CPI and COLAs, did you want me to field any questions on Treasury, or do you want me to go right into the other topics? Okay. Revisiting our CPI versus COLA topic, this was originally a request from council back in the spring, and we provided the data to compare area inflation marked here by San Diego Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. At the time, we only had data through January of 2024, and the request from council was to come back once we had the July 2024 data, and that's what we see here. The previous table that was provided in the spring only had 2 columns of employee groups, but subsequent changes required the table be expanded to 4. Notably, VCMA had a salary survey, and they had an extra 3% that was added to their column. That's the second column there of groups of employees. And then similarly, the VCOA was formally established and shifted from getting the COLAs that were provided to VCEA and Management Confidential to shadowing the VFFA, which gave them a unique return for that last period that's shown here. And so in summary, the real question was, are employee groups keeping up with the cost of living or with inflation? And the answer is varied. One group is VFFA is out in front of the compounded CPI of 22.73% here. They've outpaced it by about 1.35%. VCMA is just about even. They're 6 basis points behind. The other 2 groups, VCOA is 2.17% behind, and VCEA and Management Confidential are 3.45% behind CPI for the period from July 2020 through July 2024. Let's see.
I'm sure you're just about to get there, but I have a question.
Sure.
So what does that add up to in real dollars of lost purchasing power for our employees? Do we know? Do we know what it would cost us to bring our VCMA and VCOA up to even with purchasing power?
I haven't calculated it specifically on one group, but the approximate cost to the general fund, if there were, say, a 3% across the board increase in compensation, the extra cost of the general fund would be an ongoing cost in $25 of about $1.1 to $1.2 million.
And what can you say during the same period of time covered by your presentation about the revenues of the city from sales taxes and property taxes?
Sales taxes and property taxes have increased by a similar percent. I didn't bring that information with me tonight, but I know when I did the presentation in spring, the percentage increases of those 2 primary revenue measures were comparable to inflation.
Well, that continues to be my reason for, and I didn't ask specifically for this to be brought back tonight, but I'm the one that's asked repeatedly for this to be brought forward. Our revenues go up when inflation goes up, because cost of goods goes up. That means our sales tax revenue goes up. When property values go up, property taxes go up, our property tax revenue goes up. Our city's revenues are going up. Our employees, some of them are not getting pay raises that are keeping their purchasing power up with inflation, while our revenues have gone up. And if we don't pass those increases along, then what we're doing is effectively shorting our employees, and we're then taking those new dollars and we're going, oh, look at all the things we can do and things that we can pay for. And of course, we always want to be able to do those discretionary things. But in reality, I think we have some obligation to our employees to make sure that, if our revenues go up, we're able to make sure that they don't lose purchasing power. And that's where I'm at, is on the losing purchasing power. It's not right for our revenues to be going up while they can't afford to buy as many gallons of gas, eggs, and butter and milk as they could buy the year before, even after a raise. So I see Councilmember Contreras has a question.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mayor. I think you made that point before when we reviewed this about, hey, sales tax and the revenue that we're receiving is going up. But if I remember clearly, the costs completely outstripped the increase in revenue. Wasn't that, am I remembering that accurately, that the cost to do business was much higher than the additional revenue that we received as far as a percentage?
I'm not sure what you mean by the increased cost to do business.
Yeah, so, our revenues were going up, but so was the cost of contracts and whatnot. Because I distinctly remember you putting that in the presentation, and our revenues went up a certain percentage, but the costs that we realized were much higher than the increase in revenues. Is that accurate?
I recall the
Yeah.
point you're making. Yeah, some of the costs certainly have gone up more than, what we see here of call it 23% in 4 years. As I recall, I think it was, maybe some professional services, some, ancillary
Right.
costs. Obviously the primary costs of the city were a service organization, and it's primarily related to our personnel. But yeah, there were some outliers that significantly outpaced inflation.
Right. So I definitely get where, Mayor Franklin, where you're coming from. I wish that, the revenues that we were getting far exceeded the costs of running a city, but that hasn't actually come, that's not the reality that we're in. One thing I know that we're going to be doing negotiations with our different associations coming up. I really look forward to those discussions. And one thing when we were moving forward with these contracts, I know that we were really concerned because inflation was just continue to go up and up and up. I am thankful for the numbers that I see in front of us, that the inflation has not outpaced all the associations, but there clearly is a loss of purchasing power. So I look forward to those negotiations as they come back to council. But thank you for just clarifying where we're at.
Is that something you can do for us, is quantify the increased costs that are outside of our payroll costs, which obviously we control, so that we can understand what the delta in revenues and the delta in costs and any net surplus revenue that we have based on the fact that our revenues have gone up and considering our increased costs. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, if we take the dollars that our revenue went up and we quantify that, which is a simple subtraction issue, money we received this year, subtract money we received last year, those are our net increase in revenues. And then we could look at our non-payroll expenses and subtract the 2024 non-payroll expenses, subtract the 2023 non-payroll expense from the 2024 payroll expense. That would give us our net increase in non-payroll expense. And then we could look at what's left over if we had those numbers in front of us. You see what I'm saying? Because we could pave the roads, invest in new parks, We could do any number of good things, and some of those things we should do with those increased revenues, and then perhaps some of them, we want to make sure our employees aren't losing purchasing power. Councilman Green.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Sylvia, for your report. Love numbers. It's one of my favorite things. Universal language. Looks like from a recommendation standpoint, we were just receiving and filing this report. However, there is a recommended action attached to this to adopt a resolution amending City Council use of year-end fund balance. What exactly am I amending with my use of year-end fund balance?
That was on my next slide, but I
Oh, sorry. I thought you said, do I have any questions already? So I'm like ready for my questions to make a motion. Let's roll. Go ahead. Moving on to the next slide. I will delete my face.
So at the spring city council goal setting session back in it was March or April, council came to a conversational consensus to create ranges for the two components of the reserve policy. For the emergency reserve, previously the number had been a single target of 30% of operating expenses in the general fund, and the Section 115 pension trust was 1.5 years of total annual CalPERS pension obligations. During the goal-setting session, council came to a verbal consensus of creating a range for the two, for the general emergency reserves being 30 to 35% of general fund operating budget expenditures, and the Section 115 trust being 1 year to 1.5 years of total annual CalPERS pension obligations. And staff's looking for formal approval of that conversation, and I believe it's on page 6, has the red line copy of the recommended changes. And I can say that even with the, if council were to approve these ranges, we would still be compliant with both components. The general reserves right now are at about 30.56%, and being quite frank with the pension reserves, we're certainly compliant with 1.5 years. We're actually more than that, but the denominator is a little bit in question as far as whether or not we calculate them based on book value or market value, because just in the last 3 months, the Section 115 trust has increased by, I think, $900,000 in market value. It's tracking the stock market. Obviously, those are longer term investments. And so I will be honest with you all, I want to come to you with an idea for possibly peeling off some of that extra funding and doing an additional discretionary payment to CalPERS, but I don't want us to be short when we sell a portion of that portfolio, have the market tank, and then we don't have that piggy bank when we have a fiscal emergency. And so the city manager and I have talked about it a bit, but unless I can come up with a really good strategy to ensure whether it's a 50 or 200-day minimum moving average of the S&P 500, I don't want to bore you with details of statistical analysis, but short of something like that, we're probably best to stand pat. But anyhow, long-winded request from council or staff's recommendation to establish those ranges for the two components of the reserve.
Well, for me, if you were moving those funds into our pension reserves, I could support that. So, but you're saying you're not currently, we've got a proposal, and I know council is moving that direction. I'm sorry, Councilmember Green, were you?
No, you're good.
Kind of, but, so you don't have a proposal that you want to lay before us for that?
I don't. I've discussed it a bit with our advisors at PFM, but we haven't established a strategy yet. When we do, I certainly will bring it back to council if it seems like there's something that's viable to where we can pay down the CalPERS unfunded actuarial liability.
Well, I mean, what we're going to do with the money is kind of, we're saying we don't want to keep so much money invested. We know we don't do that well with it. Although at the same time, we've been fortunate. We haven't had an economic downturn since the Great Recession, and not one that lasted. We're on probably the precipice of major wars in Europe that the United States could be drawn into. Have already had a major impact on our economy. The Middle East is a powder keg right now. Basically, they are at war with Israel attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. So, I mean, it's not a matter of if we're going to have a recession. We're going to have one. It's just a matter of how we're going to be positioned to meet the challenges of it when it comes. So I'm not super stoked about reducing our reserves. I mean, 35% represents roughly 3 or 4 months of our operating, capital. In my small business, I keep 3 or 4 months of enough money to pay the bills and pay the employees in the bank, and if I don't, I'm out of business. Most organizations keep 3 or 4 months worth of their operating expenses in the bank, and consider that if they don't have that kind of operating capital, that they're not very well positioned to be able to meet immediate cash demands. And I'll just say again quickly, we had to go to our employees and ask them if we wanted a layoff or a pay cut. Our employees decided to have a pay cut. I didn't want to be in that position again, and so as a junior member of this council, I worked to establish these reserve rates, and I think we've been in such a tremendously strong fiscal position because of these policies. And as I look at some of the other cities around us who are no longer able to survive on the revenues that they have, we've been really great stewards of our resources here and the taxpayer money, and I just want to continue to see us do that. Councilmember Green, I had you on the list twice somehow. I don't know how you did that, but we'll go back to you.
I know magic, so that was good. When I'm done speaking, I'd like you to recall on me again so I can follow up on my comments. I'm just joking. Mr. Sylvia, I appreciate the report and kind of answering my question to what is the policy change. I didn't realize there were 2 more pages of your report there. My question had to do with basically exactly what the mayor was talking about. If I'm clear on what you're saying, is any discretionary payment in the future would come from excess reserves. Right now, we're not really doing anything with it, but in the future, if you can have a good plan for it, you're going to present it to this council, and we may amend policy 200-19 again if that's what's in the best interest of the city financially.
I don't know that it would require a policy amendment. It would really just be recognizing a surplus specific to the Section 115 pension trust. And again, those funds can only be used for pension-related expenses.
So the discretionary payment would go towards the
correct.
The CalPERS trust pension obligation.
Yes, sir. And I'm, like I said, I want to have, to the mayor's point, I want to make sure we have a durable solution that is not just sustainable, but is resilient if we have a significant economic downturn, because we have been fortunate.
And from right now, what you're saying is in the Section 115 pension trust, the amount of excess revenue we have exceeds 1.5 years of total annual pension obligation. So right now, we're not necessarily outside of compliance because we have more than enough, but that's where the extra money is right now, just in that Section 115. The emergency reserves aren't being affected. It's the 115 trust we're speaking of.
That's correct.
Okay,
We're close to the floor of the range that's shown here on the core emergency reserves at 30.5%.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I appreciate the information. I think, the mayor's right. We don't ever want to be in a situation like we were in again, where we had to cut our staff and kind of ask them what they wanted to do. And that's the reason why this council over the last 8 years has really increased this reserve to this amount. I initially was happy with 20%, then 25%, then 30%. So, 35 was a little much for me. It's always great to have a lot, but I think keeping it at that range, 30 to 35 is great. Might eventually be 30, but I love the idea of if we have extra money right now, paying down that pension trust while the market's good, you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. So thank you for your work on this. And I look really forward to really digging into the S&P 500 5-year layout and what the forecasts are and things. So please schedule a meeting. Great day.
Councilmember Contreras.
All right. So it looks like we're near the end of the slides. Did you want to continue?
Yes, my last slide here is just comparing June of 2024 to June of 2023. There's nothing really specific here to compare. This is kind of the part of the report where I would say normally this portion of this item would just be on consent, and since I've been here, I don't think it's ever been pulled off of consent, but it provides a little bit of a graphic illustration of the breakdown of the different components of how the portfolio was put together.
Yeah, and it looks like we got am I reading this correctly, that it looks like we sold off our supernatural?
Yeah, those were.
Were they a little bit low,
I
or
don't
just
I don't
some issues with them?
I don't recall off the top of my head if they naturally matured or if we sold them a little bit early, but you can see the position in agency commercial-backed mortgage securities is increased significantly, and the yields for that government-sponsored enterprise have been quite attractive, which is why we've moved largely in that direction.
Okay, awesome. And I have a question regarding the section 115 pension trust. And what is the relationship between this trust paying off our pension obligation and the rate of return that CalPERS has? Is there any connection between those two, or are they all separate elements?
So the pool portfolio that we see here is separate from the Section 115 trust. The Section 115 trust is 50% fixed income, like all of this is, except for the cash portion. And then the other half of the 115 trust is in stocks, it's in equities, which is why it will swing more wildly, which is why I'm cautious in coming to council and saying, hey, let's grab $2, $3, $5 million that look like they're excess funds and utilize them in an additionally discretionary payment to CalPERS. Because if, quite frankly, if the market were to decrease similar to what happened in late 2008 to early 2009, I mean, the Dow, if I remember correctly, lost probably 60% of its value. And you can imagine what is $22 million now, half of that is 11. If that 11 were to lose half of its position, which could happen in an economic downturn like that, all of a sudden we're well within our range, maybe closer to that 1 year, and we've sort of pinched off one of the big tools in the toolbox that we would need to navigate a significant recession.
Okay, yeah. I know it's a little complicated because of where the market is difficult to read at this point. There's a lot of different scenarios that could go down, some good, some extremely bad. So I appreciate your forward thinking, but also being very cautious with that. And I appreciate the streamlining that we've been able to achieve, just to make it a little bit easier for the public and for council to see exactly where we're at with our reserves and our investments. So you were instrumental, Mike, in doing that. I'll go ahead and, since there is a staff recommendation, I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept staff's recommendation. And that looks like the emergency reserves having a scale of 30% to 35. And then you also are requesting on the Section 115 pension trust, right? Okay. So I'll go ahead and move forward staff's recommendation. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
I will second that. Great job. I just had a real quick question. So if we have unrealized losses in our reserve, and you said it's at about 30.5% right now, what is a triggering mechanism that goes in that we would have to have a higher scale? So to meet that 30% or that 35%, is that a decision that we made at the council with our funds, or what would trigger us to need to go to the higher percentage at 35?
So we wouldn't have an unrealized loss specific to the reserves.
Okay.
We could certainly, if the general fund budget were to grow significantly, say with the next 2-year budget, which is quite possible, when staff came back to council the following fall, when we bring that fourth quarter report, we've got language in the policy that basically says, the two components of the reserve have to meet their floor before, we normally will, they're fully funded, we go right to the laundry list of the requests from staff for special projects. Some of those projects may not get funded because we've got to make sure we're at least at the floor of those two components of the reserve.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I agree with the mayor's comment. To to put people in that position that they were put in before. I certainly don't ever want to see happen in this city again. So that was my only question. I appreciate, again, your hard work on this and constantly updating it. What did you say earlier, an inverse yield curve?
An inverted yield curve.
Inverted, yeah.
Typically with an efficient market, risk and return are going to have a positive relationship, meaning you go further out, you're taking on more risk, you're going to demand a higher return. But over the last 2 years, overnight and short-term rates have been significantly higher than intermediate and long-term rates.
Awesome. All right, and that's all my questions. Thank you.
What is the, so we haven't talked a lot about our target range for our 115 trust, but what is the, you express it here in 1 to 1.5 years worth of our present pension obligations. So what is the balance of our 115 trust, and how would you, what would that relate to in number of months for our current pension obligations?
So currently, the total is, I've got the exact number here, but it's between $11 and $12 million. That would represent 1 year. So here we go. Yeah, 1 year is 11.7 million, and so 1.5 times that is about 17.5. Currently, our market value, let's see, as of the end of the fiscal year, it was 21.3 million, and as of the end of last month in August, it was 22.2.
So 22 months. So that's more than the 18 months.
Correct.
At the high end of the range.
That is the market value. The book value is 19.6 million.
How's the book value derived?
That's just simply the deposited amount, the sum of the deposited amount. Obviously, it's an inverse situation to what we've been dealing with.
So you're saying the 19 million is our investment, and the additional 3 million are our unrealized gains.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. I would be voting with the council on this if it was paired with. I don't want to go, I don't want to even have a cap on our 115 reserve. We make more money and have more flexibility in the way we can invest that fund. So I think it's smart to move money to that 115 trust. So if we were moving that money out of our emergency fund into the 115 fund, which did two things. Number one, it gave us more flexibility and higher returns on our investments. I would support that. Number two, it would give us certainty. The thing I like about the 115 trust is pays up that obligation, and in an economic downturn, frees up our cash flow, because it would give us the option to short pay our obligations and dip into that 115 trust to pay current pension obligations. So essentially, it gives us the ability to access our cash flows in the future, while sort of taking the temptation off the table to go, well, what could we do with 5% of our, so 5% of our general fund. So that represents about $7 million.
Yeah, 5.5 or almost 6. But
we spend 120 million a year, so 35% as a percentage of our general fund. So 5% of $120 million, right?
But a portion of that 120, about 7.6 million, is internally transferred, and it's represented by excess cannabis as well as excess Prop L funds. So really, it's going from one account in the general fund to the other. It's not truly funding something else. If those excess funds simply weren't there, those transfers wouldn't happen. So the true baseline cost is more like 113 million. It's 112.9.
Oh, so you're saying that's our base number that we take the 35% of. Okay,
Correct.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So $5 million. Well,
yeah, about 5.5. To your point,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Without quibbling over $1 million here, $1 million there, my point is $5 million, seven, whatever it is an attractive sum of money that looks like we could spend it on whatever we want. I want to make sure that when we have a sum of money like that we derive some long-term benefit for the taxpayer. And, one of the things, I don't know if in the agency boards that you're sitting on You've talked much, we haven't talked much here about generational equity, but generational equity is the idea that by short paying our present term pension obligations, we're really stealing from the younger people that are coming behind us. We're creating an obligation that they will come behind us and have to fulfill. The very real impact of that is seen with PEPRA. Public employees are earning a less generous pension today than they did in years past. So younger workers at the City of Vista and throughout the state of California receive fewer benefits while they are in fact actually subsidizing pension obligations for those who came before them. And in some cases, and I've seen the analysis on this, effectively are paying into some of the obligations for those who came before them in addition to fully funding their own. So there's something that happens when we short pay, which is basically we're cheating the next generation. So I think it's very important that we all kind of become aware of this issue. Fully funding our pension obligations in the here and now, it should be that we are, fully contributing with every payroll cycle. Leaving any of those obligations to the future is really represents to our children's generation potentially a theft from them. So I think that's something we really want to be aware of and be very considerate of. We should be thinking about our next generation. Councilmember Green, did you have one more thought there?
I certainly did. I just want to make sure numbers-wise I'm looking at everything correctly. When I'm looking at our portfolio value as of 6/30/2023 and our portfolio value as of 6/30/2024, it appears as if the overall value has increased by 11.55%, which is $27,048,469. Is that correct? I mean, you could just look at it. It's $27 million bucks, right? My question on this is when I'm investing in things and I see that I've made a really nice gain on something and it's like a uncommon gain, such as when I look at the ABS group right here, our value on that in 2023 was 3.117. It went all the way up to 10.144 mil over 12 months. That's a $7 million increase. What is that?
There's additional investments that were made.
You put it in the account. It wasn't a 325% increase in value. It'd be great if it was. I was just thinking if it was that much money, we shouldn't leave it in there because chances are it's going to go down soon. Like you're on top of that. And then the other thing was that I had a question on at the bottom. You have this broken into 3 different sections. And the section that kind of jumped out to me was the cash section where it says cash camp. I love cash camps. Any camp I can go do cash at is great. But last year, our cash camp was at 79 million. This year, it's at 95 million, which is an increase of 16,572,000. And that's like an 18.84 increase in our total amount of cash that we have in that particular account. It seems like these gains are very large gains and that they're pretty uncommon from a gain standpoint. At what point in time is our financial department, do you say, hey, these gains are crazy. How about we take them out of this, and put it into something that might be a little more secure and keep the money because I know we have unrealized losses and things like that, and you got to forecast all that. But when we have realized gains, which I see here, how can we capitalize on realized gains so that we cut down on any realized losses moving forward?
Well, realized and unrealized gains or losses are really a function of the market and how the market values the entire, not just one line on this chart, but all of them. The gain or loss, if it were to be realized, it's really an assumption that every one of the financial instruments in the city's portfolio were to be cashed out at that moment. You would either realize, at that moment, you would realize that loss or that gain. Mm-hmm. And so it's really highly theoretical because yes, could you cash them out if you had a large unrealized gain?
Or realized gain, not unrealized, but realized, right?
At that point, it would be unrealized. But yeah, if you were to realize it, you still have to reinvest.
I got you.
Those funds. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is even though it looks like we made 27 million bucks in 1 year, technically that's not real money that we get to just not do what we want with per se, but it's not money you have to worry about pulling out of investment or putting back in an investment. Like it's It's money that's constantly floating within the makeup of your portfolio. Like, it's not smarter to take money out of this bond thing where we lost $30 million and put it down here in the camp thing where I made $20 million. Like, is there, I'm not a financial guy. I'm just asking questions because to me, it's not magic, it's math. So I'm asking,
Yes.
what's
No,
the
I
best way to
appreciate the
do it,
question.
you know?
And it's worth mentioning, obviously we're seeing two moments in time here
Yeah.
at the end of 2 fiscal years. That 90, call it almost 96 million in cash today, or by the end of this week, will be about $59 million. And the reason why is there is a seasonality to our cash flows. Typically, the low point in any of those 3 cash accounts, whichever is yielding the best, will have the biggest number. You can see the other 2 numbers are much, much smaller. I could probably do the city a better job if I just left $1,000 in those 2. But those were the 2
I'm just saying,
that were
right now
left.
we're comparing apples to apples, though. They're the same
but yeah,
exact
no,
dates that you
it's a
have in
really
front
good
of
question.
me here. So
And-
that's what I was wondering is.
But there is seasonality in May, June, and even early July. That's when we see that cash account get the largest, and it'll decrease by about 50%. When I ran the numbers for camp last fiscal year, there was this was the highest month-ending cash balance, but in October of 2023, it was $50 million.
Okay, so
that
if you were to
speaks
do the same
how
thing,
much it moves.
so like when you report back to the council and said, hey, these are the October to October numbers, that gain of 28% isn't necessarily going to be there because you've
Correct.
spent, so some of it's just kind of reserve cash that is already budgeted to be allocated.
Right. And,
Okay.
And in truth be told, as that inverted yield curve begins to equalize, and we can get larger gains 2 months, 3 months, 6 months out.
Yeah.
Frankly, that's when I'll be going to the analysts and all the departments and our CIP managers, asking them for cash flows.
Okay.
Because once I know what we need in, say, the next 6 months, if we have extra money that we can invest 3, 4, 6 months out, and I can invest, say, because we don't have any commercial paper here.
Yeah.
I might make a better return there than what the overnight Camp, LAIF, or San Diego County investment pool rates are.
Okay, and I love hearing that because this is the most important report I get in my business and in my life. And when I speak with my financial guy, these are my questions is, hey, where am I investing? Can I invest better? Should I invest more conservative here? Should I invest more aggressive here? And as stewards of the city's money, I just want to make sure we're asking the right questions and making sure that if I have, things that are overperforming or underperforming, that I'm aware of that from a financial aspect. And it's not me, it's you. So I appreciate you knowing you're on top of all that is kind of what we need to make sure as a council. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry to grill you. Appreciate you. Has there been a second already to the motion? Thank you.
Did you second it? Sounds good. Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And as I said, I'm voting no because if this had come with a proposal to spend this money by investing it in the 115 fund, I would have voted yes. Because it's not married with that proposal, I don't support it because basically now you've just said the money is available to be spent, and I don't like that. Okay, that will bring us to an item that I asked to be on the agenda, which is a resolution supporting Prop 36. And I am a strong supporter of this Prop 36, which would seek to restore some penalties for repeat offenders when it comes to shoplifting. And I did see that the legislature tried to pass some kind of half-measure stuff to convince voters that this was not necessary. But it also, those measures that the legislature passed, and I just was reading, somebody actually just, while I was sitting here, because they knew I was going to be talking about this tonight, sent me the LA Times opinion piece, which very interestingly blames police for not making misdemeanor arrests, because in the words of the LA Times, according to the editors of the LA Times who wrote this piece, they think that police think it's not worth their time. Well, in reality, what we've seen with the jails unable or unwilling to detain those individuals for misdemeanor crimes, or with courts unwilling or unable to bring sentence, we do have a functional free-for-all on theft in our stores. And Anybody who thinks that that's not true hasn't spent much time in the grocery stores and other shopping businesses here in Vista. We heard directly from the proprietors at Vons that shoplifting had a major impact on their business. And you can say that Walgreens is closing their stores. Sure they are, but it didn't help that we had a rampant shoplifting problem. If their stores were in the black and profitable, they probably wouldn't have closed those store locations. So whether or not people pay for the merchandise in our stores or not is a big deal, because it means, like when we lost Vons, we lost 120 jobs for people in our community. I knew some of the people that worked at that store. They had the best floral shop in town. If you didn't want to spend, we have some other great ones like Crozier's and some other really good ones that are, you know, for Valentine's Day or whatever. But when I wanted to stop and buy flowers for my wife on the regular, that was my go-to spot. So I miss being able to shop there. And we've seen a real detriment to the community in a shopping center I drove by today that's all covered up with patchwork of graffiti cover-up, paint jobs, and boarded up windows. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't aspire to lead a city into the ground like San Francisco by looking the other way while people steal. I don't know how many of you have been to the 80,000 square foot food bank here in Vista, but they supply fresh produce, diapers, baby formula, and all manner of fresh new items. Very little of the merchandise they have there is expired. Most of it's brand new merchandise that they purchase with generous contributions from their donors. They have a beautiful, small 2,000 square foot shopping experience when you come in, and all you do is self-certify that you're in need, and you can take the food and other items, deodorant, personal hygiene, feminine hygiene items that you need. So when I see that, and when I see that the food bank has 200 locations in San Diego County, and many of those in locations that we're familiar with, like the one that we were all at when we opened a satellite food bank at Operation Hope here in Vista. There are a lot of places where people can go to get food and other necessary items. There is absolutely no need for anybody to steal those items. And when we asked deputies to organize a retail theft operation, we saw very clearly that the people that were stealing in our stores were not people who were local. The first people we arrested had come from Riverside, and then we arrested people from San Bernardino, people who had driven more than 100 miles because they were known in their own communities. So they came to our communities to steal from our stores. It's wrong. And I witnessed some of the people that stole, they did not get arrested. They were given a citation. But the functional state of our laws right now is you're given a citation and you don't appear in court. The judge issues a bench warrant for your arrest. And when the deputies or police officers come into contact with that individual a second time, they're still not jailed even on that bench warrant. So functionally, if you don't volunteer to walk through the front door of the court, there's no way you'll ever face justice for those crimes. The governor has rightly pointed out a frustration that for whatever reason, local jurisdictions are unable or unwilling to enforce some of these misdemeanor crimes. In other states in the union, if you commit the misdemeanor crime of shoplifting, you will be prosecuted and you probably will spend time in jail, especially if you are a repeat offender. In California and right now in Vista, the functional reality is it does not matter how many times you steal, you likely will never face consequences. And what we have right now is a $600 tax, according to the California Retail Federation. Every family in our city is spending $600 more every single year to pay the cost of things that are being stolen out of our stores and not paid for. So those of us who are honest and hardworking and believe that we should pay for the things we leave the store with, we're paying the tax. The shoplifting is one issue, but a bigger issue is the 1,203 people that died in San Diego County last year of overdose. We have people selling fentanyl that they know is killing their victims. I have a family member on the other side of the country who took what she thought was a hydrocodone, but it was laced with fentanyl, and she was in the ICU in a coma for months, and family had to go and support her, and thank God she recovered, but with some long-term health impacts. Earlier this year, a good friend of mine, his son took what he thought was Adderall, and he overdosed and died. And so this is touching all of us and all of our lives. And one of the things that I think is very important about Prop 36 is that it puts murderers who sell fentanyl on record that if you sell fentanyl and you do it repeatedly and you cause the death of one of your victims, that you will be prosecuted for murder. Now, I want to make the point that we absolutely do prosecute people who are drunk drivers in the state of California. If you get behind the wheel of a car and you cause the death of another person because you're intoxicated, you will be prosecuted for murder. So that's second-degree murder in the state of California, and you will face as many as 15 years in prison. And there is a gentleman that I recently shared with the public when I made this point, who was sentenced about 3 or 4 months ago to 20-plus years in the California penitentiary for his role in killing somebody while he was intoxicated behind the wheel of a car. So why do we hold people whose behavior is wantonly reckless and get behind the wheel of a car while they're drunk accountable for committing a murder, but we do not hold those people accountable who are absolutely murdering people knowingly by selling product that they know is laced with fentanyl? The children that were here in our audience tonight, there is a grave likelihood that one of them will be affected by this. This is killing people in our community. 400 of the people who died of fentanyl and overdose last year were unsheltered in our community. That was 6% of the county population of unsheltered people died of overdose last year. It is not okay to sell this poison to people, especially to children and unsuspecting victims, and not be held to account. And the argument that we should not be putting people in the penitentiary who are knowingly causing the death. This is not putting people in the penitentiary for the first time selling drugs, nor is this law seeking to punish anybody for having a personal use quantity. But it does seek to punish people who are repeat offenders and drug sellers whose product is likely to, and they are noticed under the law that their activities of selling these drugs, if they cause a death, that then they will be prosecuted. Right now, we've prosecuted only a handful of people. In the last 5 years, less than 10 at the state level have been prosecuted. I have to compliment our Assistant U.S. Attorney, Adam Gordon, has taken a special interest in prosecuting murderers at the federal level who sell this fentanyl poison. But these individuals who sell this poison and do it knowingly, they deserve to be put into the penitentiary for a long period of time. So I hope you'll take a look at voting in favor of this resolution to encourage voters to support it. Voters, I think, are ready for a change. They're ready for a return to law and order. They think that people shouldn't steal things without facing punishment, and they think that people shouldn't murder other people without facing punishment. So I would appreciate your yes vote. And let me just really quick run through the resolution so that the public knows what I'm asking you to vote on. It says the City Council hereby finds and declares the following: while Prop 47 achieved notable success in making California's criminal justice system more equitable, Prop 47 has also led to unintended consequences over the past decade. I would note, by the way, that the nonpartisan or bipartisan California Association of District Attorneys actually was the author of this and supplied this to the City of Vista so that I could introduce it. This is a nonpartisan working group of all of the county district attorneys who have endorsed this. And as you know, our local district attorney, who is a nonpartisan, is a great leader, Summer Steffen, in this. It says unintended consequences of Prop 47 include repeat and often organized retail theft. And let me tell you, we saw the organized level of retail theft when we did our operations. As you know, we made news when we issued we served a search warrant. We recovered $200,000 worth of high-end merchandise at a local home. These individuals are making a great living selling these items, and they're victimizing everybody else in the community. Let's see, organized retail theft, inner city store closings, that's us also, difficulty convincing people to seek drug and mental health treatment. We also have a big problem with that here in Vista. These unintended consequences can only be corrected by the voters at the ballot box with modest amendments to Prop 47. And by the way, this is not a repeal. I wish it was, but it provides some modest improvements. Prop 36, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act, is a bipartisan measure that provides common sense targeted reforms to Prop 47 that legislative propositions are unable to deliver, because Prop 47 was approved by the voters. Only another ballot proposition, not the legislature, has the power to amend. So as much as our legislature is offering half measures, they do not have the power to undo the law that is made by the people directly. Only the people have the right to do that. Rampant retail theft is harming businesses and residents in California because those who commit these crimes know that they will get away with it even if they are caught. A very true statement. This measure will hold repeat offenders accountable for the safety of our communities rather than putting them back on the streets. That's what we're really talking about here tonight. Repeat offenders. People, not the person who one time commits a crime. These are people who are serial offenders who are victimizing our community. The fentanyl crisis has reached alarming levels and is now responsible for 20% of the youth deaths in California. Proposition 36, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act, will define fentanyl as a hard drug, hold individuals convicted of trafficking fentanyl accountable, and grant judges greater discretion in sentencing these drug traffickers. Breaking the cycle of repeat offenders means addressing the many root causes of retail theft. It's time for meaningful reforms to our justice system that ensure our communities are safe. The City Council supports Prop 36, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act, and the benefit that it provides to our community safety. And I would personally add, encourages them to support this important initiative. That is the resolution, and I would make a motion and hope that you would join me in approving this resolution. Councilmember O'Donnell. Oh, we have a public speaker on this, Kenneth, who's on Zoom. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Hi, so I just want to urge this council to reject support for Proposition 36. It would mean rolling back the progress we've made for Prop 47. It would take us back to a time where effective mass incarceration and a time when our communities had fewer tools to keep our communities safe. So the Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst Office and Californians for Safety and Justice have projected that Prop 36 would cut around $100 million each year for essential funding for drug treatment, housing, and school-based programs. These programs often proven to prevent crime and support our most vulnerable residents. Prop 36 would provide no new funding for drug treatment or homeless prevention. It would redirect $750 million from successful drug treatments and homeless programs. It would also take away $300 million from service for crime survivors. It also defunds school-based protective programs by over $10 million. These cuts will undermine our efforts to keep our communities safe. The harsh reality is these changes would disproportionately affect poor Californians and people of color. So more Californians would find themselves in jail time or prison for low-level offenses, costing taxpayers an additional $5 billion a year on top of the already staggering $27 billion spent annually on jails, prisons, and courts statewide. In San Diego County alone, the cost of detention and correction already reaches $552 million. Support of Prop 36 argues that it'll keep California safer, but in reality, it risks making our communities less safe. Programs funded by Prop 47 have successfully increased violent crime rates, and is keeping prisons less overcrowded and dangerous. So regarding theft, Prop 36 will expand penalties for theft, even to a degree that even failing to return a rental car on time could result in increased prison time, because it allows local governments to basically put together crimes that are unrelated from different parts of the counties, which already the state put a bill together that is in effect passed. Prop 36 will also allow prosecutors to combine like unrelated misdemeanors. And Prop 47 put in place, which set the felony threshold at $950, which is already lower than more than 40 other states. So I don't think we need to change this at all. And research has shown that when laws allow discretion in charging people of color, often face harsher penalties. California recently passed 10 new crime bills that all address this. And we need to be mindful about how these changes will impact our communities. So I urge you all to consider the long-term consequences of Prop 36 and continue to support our community and public safety. Thanks.
Next, we'll go to caller ending in phone number 6841 on Zoom. Caller ending in 6841, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Armin Kurdian. I'm a Vista resident. I'd like to make comments in support of this resolution. Prop 36 will overturn a lot of the bad things that were done with Prop 47. The consequences of Prop 47 have been seen in a lot of downtowns in our major cities. It is a major reason why San Francisco has a 36% vacancy rate in its downtown. The courts have lost a vital tool with the passing of Prop 47 to impose diversions and ensure that crime is actually prosecuted and that criminals or low-level criminals, instead of going to jail or set free, are actually put into rehab programs. The reason that crime is statistics are lower is because essentially nobody reports these crimes anymore. Disadvantaged communities have suffered massively with loss of retail and choice at their levels, with the associated loss of jobs. And then the proof is in the pudding with the mass migration outside or out of the state of California, as evidenced by we lost a congressional representative in California, and if this continues, the trends assess that we may lose up to 4 seats in Congress by the 2030 census. So I strongly support the passing of Prop 36. It is supported by 71% of the California population, and I urge the council to vote yes in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now close the opportunity for public comment. Go to Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to start off by saying I'm genuinely sorry to hear about your family member and friend. That is terrible to hear. I know that is not unique to your situation in any way. There's millions of people across the state that have been impacted by fentanyl and across the country, honestly. I did have a question for our city attorney. So a lot of different things that I've heard about Prop 36 versus some of the legislation that was passed. So I just want to try and get clarification around. Are there any financial implications that our city would have if Prop 36 were to pass? So basically, in other words, would Prop 36 pass on any financial obligations from our city or to our city for any programming that currently exists?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. How does Prop 36 differ from the collective laws that were signed in to law by Governor Newsom, specifically with AB 1802 and 2943?
So those assembly bills targeted more organized or professional smash and grab groups. Prop 36 is actually looking more at individuals, people with multiple convictions for retail theft. So it doesn't focus so much solely on groups. Prop 36 also incorporates drug-related crimes, turns certain drug-related misdemeanors into what they're calling felony treatment mandated felonies, where basically if the person enters a drug or mental treatment and successfully completes the program, then the charges are dismissed. And then the last part of Prop 36 is where there's a warning to people that if you supply or sell dangerous narcotics and causes a death, that you could be charged with murder. So it's a little bit of overlap on the theft, but 36 is a lot broader.
And so with Prop 36, do second-time offenders also get the same ability to have any charges dropped if they go through another program? Or is there a cutoff or threshold? So is it second offense, third offense, or?
It was third offense.
Third?
Yeah. Drug-related crime with 2 prior convictions, drug-related convictions.
Awesome, thank you. So just for clarification, I know that there's been, one of the speakers mentioned the laws that were signed into effect by Governor Newsom. So specifically 1802, or AB 1802, is designed to stop retail theft that supports basically our local businesses and agencies. So it is to kind of curtail what the mayor's talking about, and a lot of people experience as far as retail theft within our businesses and organized theft within our businesses. When it comes to 2943 that was signed into law, it directly addresses property crime. So between these two, it's property crime, retail theft, robberies, and then most importantly in my mind is the sale of those stolen items on the secondary market, which is where a lot of people get their income once they steal or from our businesses. So it will increase the enforcement of prosecutions, combines the values to meet felony offenses, which, you know, I look at Prop 47 and I do see some good that's come out of it, but I feel like we have spent billions and billions of dollars in this state, and it has cost this state billions and billions of dollars, and it's a policy that does need correcting. Prop 36, in my mind, most importantly, does crack down on fentanyl. It provides stricter penalties for that, while providing an avenue to also get rehabilitation for those that are struggling with addiction, so long as they're not a third-time, fourth-time offender. And so also it stipulates that it's a non-violent drug-related offense, right? So my biggest thing on this is I've tried to do a lot of research on this and just try and come up with reasons to support or just make a decision on it one way or the other. My biggest thing is that time is not static, and neither can our legislative body be static or our laws. And so Prop 47, while it may have been well-intended, I think that there are some severe loopholes and cavities that need to be corrected. We need to adapt in the state of California to the ongoing crisis that is the reality of addiction, it's the reality of theft, it is a reality of the rise in cost of living, which has created it's a lack of housing, it's created a large exacerbation in our unsheltered population throughout the state. There's a lot of different things the state needs to work on. Again, Prop 47 might have been intended to be good policy, but we need to revisit these. And I'm going to say that I will support Prop 36 in this motion, so I will second it. But I hope that our state and our legislative body do keep a close eye on how these laws are, how effective they are, and they don't wait so long next time to try and make reform. I also need to make, well, not need, but I would like to see our legislature make sure that they do increase funding to make sure that there is housing available, that there is addiction services available, that we can keep our communities protected, and just reform laws that sometimes don't work. So, Mayor, I will be supporting this. I'm interested to hear what the rest of the council has to say, but those are all my comments at this time.
Councilmember Green.
I was just going to second as well. I appreciate your comments, Councilmember O'Donnell. And seeing no other people speaking, let's go.
Did any of the other members of the council want to speak on this subject? Councilmember Contreras.
I'll just go ahead and say I understand that there has needed to be some reform for a long time. I do want to just remind, when we talk about unintended consequences, I'm not sure what the consequences might be of Prop 36, but the state of California was actually in a position of cruel and unusual punishment because of the overcrowding in the jails. That was a real thing. And I just wish that we had a lot more funding going to treatment, going to housing, and going to just real holistic rehabilitation. There are some things in Prop 36 that, you know, could be really helpful. There are also, you know, consequences that we may realize in the future. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Melendez.
I'll say I support this item, although I am concerned that there are unknown consequences of Prop 36. And I have a unique perspective. I know that Prop 47 did aim to reduce recidivism. And at one time, I worked in a Prop 47 recovery program. And one of the biggest barriers that we found in working with the participants, who everyone was justice involved, everyone had a Prop 47 misdemeanor, everyone was, eligible for services because it was recognized that their crimes were related to their behavioral health. The biggest challenge was being able to meet their basic needs. And so the lack of affordable housing and the lack of basic needs provisions in Prop 47, I think, caused it to be a major failure. And as I was serving in that program, I was motivated to run for office because I couldn't find the housing for my clients. Although they were in the program, they were sober, they were working their steps, they were doing everything that they needed to do. They had turned away from their life of crime, but many were unsuccessful because we couldn't obtain the housing resources for them. So I probably would like this resolution a little bit more if it included, some pro-housing language in there as well. But I'm confident that our city is doing a lot when it comes to affordable housing, and we recognize that housing is a basic need, and it's a responsibility of our government to advocate for housing for every member of our community, and that if people don't have the housing that they need, their behavioral health will suffer. But I do think that because of the lack of material provisions in Prop 47, it was a massive failure. And I do hope that there could be opportunities in the future for better reform, because people do need a place to live. And, that is going to continue to be one of my primary goals for our community, is to fight for affordable housing. And Prop 47 did not accomplish that. Prop 36 is not accomplishing that. But here in the city of Vista, we are working on that. So I support this as a means to try to improve some of the drawbacks of Prop 47. And hopefully we can have better reform that increases housing for people in the future.
Well, thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second, so please cast your votes. Okay, that item is approved unanimously. Thank you, Council. And that'll bring us to our final discussion item. I'm going to ask Captain Boyce to join us, because in our last discussion, where we decided to add a DUI enforcement deputy, he mentioned the possible need for a gang enforcement deputy. And, it's interesting, Captain. We know that we're facing, and I'm looking forward to getting a briefing, and maybe we want to do it in the council chambers, on the new way that we're seeing crime stats reported that are going to sort of change some of our numbers. I have one citizen in particular, you probably know who I'm talking about, who follows our crime stats very closely, and I meet with them regularly, and they're kind of, they keep me abreast of all the current numbers. But, compared to some of our neighbors, and certainly fairly some of our neighbors with higher socioeconomic status, maybe higher average incomes, we do have more violent crime. We have fewer deputies per 1,000 residents. So this has been an issue, the issue of making sure that we can adequately address crime. You brought up this idea of the potential value of maybe an additional gang enforcement deputy. And so I'd like to ask you to sort of explore that idea, and I'd like to ask my colleagues on the council to talk about whether we think that's important. We've had some gang shootings in the last 12 months that have brought this subject of gang violence into the forefront. So we do have a public comment on this from Armin Curdy. And Armin, I want to recognize you to speak for 3 minutes on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Again, Armin Kurdian, Vista resident. I'd like to make some very brief comments in support of this resolution. Actually, the way the resolution is written, I would not support it. I would actually support adding 2 sheriff's deputies to our roles. Vista has the lowest per capita presence in terms of law enforcement, at least in North County, if not for the entire city, less than 1 per 1,000. In the last several months, obviously, we've had some major tragedies. I believe by my count, there have been at least 3 deaths, 3 shooting deaths, several injured, as well as additional traffic deaths as well. Our deputies simply can't respond to every single crime that's out there. They can't patrol our streets safely. So I would strongly support adding at least 1 deputy, if not 2, so to ease the burden on them and perhaps add a little bit more of a presence and to push out these gangs who are trying to make our beautiful city someplace that it is not. So I support this. I support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would we like to hear from the captain at this time, or would we like to hear from, okay, Captain, thank you very much for coming to share some thoughts with us about the status of gang crime, and tell us a little bit. I mean, we've never, in the last decade, we've never had a presentation from our gang enforcement team to sort of share with the public, you know, what's the status of our gang enforcement efforts, and what's the size of our force, and what do you think we need?
Yeah, so, and I'll clarify like where our need truly is. Like, so the gang enforcement team, it's 1 sergeant and 6 deputies. There's also, behind the scenes, there's investigators, right? So in our narcotics and gang investigation unit, which is a contract city position, there's 2 narcotics investigators and 1 gang investigator. And in my opinion, that's where the need is. Our gang enforcement team, those are deputies that are in uniform, patrolling our streets. They're out there doing a good job. In my opinion, I mean, I'll never say no to more deputies, but in my opinion, they're doing a good job, and it seems to be working well with the sergeant and 6 deputies out in the streets. Behind the scenes is a struggle. So I would say average, that investigator, the gang investigator, handles about 5 to 6 cases a month. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you're talking about the amount of work that goes into these serious cases. A lot of these are shootings, stabbings, some that result in homicide. And you're talking about dozens of search warrants per case, because our homicide investigators rely on our gang detective. And so you're talking about a lot of work that goes into that. Right now, they're making things work. So you got the 2 narcotics investigators, like overall, like on a month, I would say that whole unit handles about 60 cases a month, or 60 to 70 cases a month. That's between the 2 narcotics investigators and the gang detective. But as far as gang cases go, you're looking at 5 to 6 a month for the gang investigator. Looking to our neighbor next door, San Marcos, they have 2 and 2 gang investigators, 2 narcotics investigators. So in my opinion, that's where the need is. Those detectives do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, search warrants, where they're, targeting people who had committed violent crimes in our community. And they're also documenting gang members, which is a lot of work in itself to make sure they're fulfilling the state requirements to maintain that database. I think I misspoke last time. I think, to clarify, Captain Rick Lopez, who I replaced, that was his ask, was for a 2nd gang detective. And that's what I'm hearing from the sergeant of the gang unit. So, just to clarify, so you have a sergeant and 6 deputies in our gang enforcement team. They're the ones out on the street. And then as far as the investigative unit goes, you have 1 sergeant and 3 detectives down there, 2 for narcotics, 1 for gangs.
And so the position that you're thinking would be top of your list, if you had 1 additional person, 1 additional sworn officer, would be more of the gang detective, or would they also be doing some narcotics investigative work?
They mainly stick to their to the gangs. So, I mean, they do help each other out. If narcotics is doing an investigation, it requires surveillance and other things, they'll help out with them.
What are we seeing in terms of gang activity in Vista? We know we have one active gang here, and we've seen some really horrible shootings this last 12 months that have been high profile.
Yeah, one day we had 2 gang-related shootings back to back. So,
were those the same perpetrators or same group of people?
The cases are still ongoing, so we're just waiting for the final report when that comes out. But sorry, what was your question again? Sorry.
I'm just curious, kind of generally, if we feel like gang crime is on the rise.
Talking to the sergeant of the investigative unit, it fluctuates constantly. Again, 5 to 6 gang investigative case doesn't sound like a lot. So that's what's going to them.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot to me, because knowing the kinds of crimes that these individuals are committing are extremely serious, probably the most serious crimes that are victimizing our community. It sounds like an awful lot. And the idea that one might be able to prosecute some more or result in more prosecutions and getting more violent criminals off the street, I like the sound of that a lot. That's something we don't often think about. A lot of times we're thinking more police means more cars on the street, but it also potentially means, and this is why I've never suggested to any of our captains where I think you need resources, because I don't know, you do, which is why I like to ask you where you think they would be the most useful, because I would never come up with the idea that a detective in the Gang Enforcement Task Force would be where you need it, because we don't see the detectives very often. We know they're there, we know they're doing really important work, but the ability to get some really bad people off the streets. And, I would just say that a lot of people, like, Councilmember O'Donnell, you and I both represented the same district, we're probably more fortunate in that we don't have as many gang crimes in our area of Vista that we live in. But it certainly affects and impacts the other areas of the city to a great degree. But we do also see some of that gang activity in our area. But particularly when I'm in North Vista, I see the gang tags. And, I asked Mr. Conley in our Public Works Department to commit, whether it's public or private property, to paint out and eliminate gang graffiti the day that it goes up, and not let the sun set on these gang tags, because it really angers me, to put it mildly. It pisses me off, frankly, when I see these gang tags, that they think that they own our city. And I don't ever want that to be the case. So our Public Works team is committed to taking those gang taggings down as soon as possible, even on private property. That way they don't get a foothold and they don't begin to think that they're in charge here. So I appreciate you sharing freely with us this need. I know it's a controversy always, but I look forward to hearing what the council has to say about it. And of course, I'm not going to go on at length, but we've hired 30 new firefighters in the last 30 years. We've hired about 5 new deputy positions in that same period of time. I've been advocating for this for well over 10 years. It didn't start or change at all when we had shootings that happened here in Vista. It didn't start or change when we had national events. This has been a long-term thing for me. I've just simply observed that we're not growing in a necessary department of government, perhaps one that is maybe the 1 or 2 most essential functions of local government with the growth in population. And this council has targeted a population growth of 50% over the next 25 years. This council has approved, I didn't vote for it, but this council has decided to take our general plan from 100,000 to 150,000 people by 2050. So before I turn it over to Councilmember O'Donnell, if we were to have 50,000 more people living in Vista, would you think that it would be a wise investment on the council's part to invest in more policing resources than we currently have to meet the needs of 50,000 new residents?
I'll leave that to the decision of the council, but obviously with more people, you're going to have more calls for service.
I just try to be a common sense guy. That's all I'm looking for. Councilmember O'Donnell.
I'm not going to ask any hypothetical questions that you can't answer at the moment, but I appreciate it. So just a couple things. So I know that last time we spoke in this chamber, you said that there was a need for it. Where are our crime statistics at now? Like historically, for as far as like gang activity, are our numbers going up? Are they in decline? Are they kind of at the status quo? Like what have you seen year over year, maybe in the last 2-3 years?
Honestly, what the numbers are showing, they're down. Not crazy, pretty subtle, but again, where this investigative position, where the value is there, it's just times have changed. I don't want to go into all the details, but you're talking about a certain gang-related crime could lead to a dozen to 20 search warrants. That's very time-consuming for an investigator. So that's more that's changing. That with technology and different uses of tools that the criminal element's using, it's opened doors to a lot of investigative follow-up.
I'm going to ask you a question I don't know if you can answer, but is there any assistance from outside agencies when those type of crimes take place?
I would say there's assistance towards the end. I mean, obviously you have the FBI and the federal task force that will help out, but the burden falls on the local investigator.
How's the morale on the department?
In my opinion, I think it looks really good.
Stronger than when you got here?
I look at it from a perspective of
trying to compliment you, just say yes.
of the Vista Station. The deputies communicate with me and they seem to be happy. So
I asked that question because I hear a lot that we don't have enough deputies, and you know that I support you and all the men and women that wear the uniform. But when I hear it over and over again that we don't have enough deputies, in my mind, there's an implication that you aren't doing a good job, and yet every time we talk, it seems as though crime is dropping and not going up, right?
Correct.
And so you're all doing a tremendous job, but when I hear that over and over, it just makes me think that the framing of that is that you're not being effective, and that could not be more untrue.
Yeah, my number one goal here at the captain level is to make sure my deputies at the station are happy, because without them, I can't achieve the goals that you guys set for us.
Yeah, I hear you. I know that our staff had mentioned that maybe we would want to wait until we have a further discussion about budget. Why is that?
We have a budget workshop in March for next year's 2-year operating budget that will give us, I think, a better financial picture of where we'll be over the next 2 years. We'll have some financial modeling associated with that. I've discussed the captain's needs with them. We're committed at the staff level to looking at it when we feel like we have a full picture of the coming budget after the March workshop. So that would be my request. I think that as far as revenues go, we may have the revenue that we need. I also want to point out to the council that in the interim, we do have a pocket of money that we budget every year to supplement the sheriff's services. And when they want to do special patrols or some type of focused enforcement that deals with a problem, like maybe some recent gang activity, we have money to supplement their services. So we do provide that, and that does help cover the gaps where we need them. I'm not disagreeing with the captain saying that he doesn't need a new position, but I think until we get to the budget discussion, I think we're in pretty good shape with the resources.
And that would include any necessary overtime for deputies to cover and help assist. Is that correct?
That's separate in the sheriff's budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was mentioned that we've hired 4 new deputies over the course of 10 years. The reality is we've only hired 2 because the SROs that we brought on were just brought on to replace the 2 that were dropped in 2020. But in a 10-year period, we only hired 2 deputies, and this council in 14 months has brought on 2. So in 14 months, we've hired the same amount of deputies that were hired in the last decade. This is a new majority. So the argument, and I understand your argument, I don't understand why this hadn't been addressed sooner before a new majority took place. And I'm not saying you haven't brought it up, because I know you have. But I'm just curious as to why previous councils, and that's not to your fault, but why previous councils didn't enact the need for more deputies if they are genuinely needed. I just want to be very clear. So are you working with city staff right now to try and compile a report of a needs analysis for any areas of your department where you may or may not need additional deputies or resources to effectively execute the safety for our community?
Yeah, I'm working with the city manager along with my analysts, and we're looking at data and staffing levels to see how we compare to other cities that are of similar size and household income.
And is it possible, actually, I shouldn't say possible, can we have that prior to the budget meeting that we have? You said March, right?
Yeah, we were planning on having it before March. We're not sure how much longer the captain's going to be with us. We want to take advantage of his wisdom.
I wish forever.
His time at the station. So it will be likely in February.
You may not, Councilmember Green. Okay, so here's where I'm at. I want the information. We've hired 2 deputies, and I want to say this very clearly. Every time I've asked you, you've always given me honest answers about the needs and assessment of your department and what you're looking at with your deputies and your team. But we've hired 2 deputies without any information that's been brought before us. We hired an extra motorcycle deputy because we only had 3. We hired a DUI deputy and traffic deputy because there's a rising number in DUIs and traffic stops for inebriated driving. I need the information in front of me to hire another deputy, especially if we're going to hire one within 14 months hiring 3 without having any statistical analysis to break down to justify the cost basis for an additional deputy. I'd support it. I told you last time, I'd love to give you both. I want to give you both, but I can't do that at this moment without that information. So based on what you've told me, as well as the recommendation from city staff, I believe it's in the best interest of this council to get that information so we can make an informed decision. So I'm going to make a motion to table this item until the very first meeting after our budget discussion or our budget workshop in March of next year.
Councilmember, would you entertain a motion instead to simply ask the sheriff's captain and staff to do some research and bring some information back on the subject so that we can have a conversation with the benefit of some additional research?
I won't change my motion, but I would love to get that information sooner. And the only reason why I won't change it is because staff recommendation to wait in the city manager, we might have a pool of money somewhere, but until we know where it's at and how we can properly execute it, I mean, we're looking at these numbers of 417,000, 357, 370 in the following year. So again, once we have the budget discussion, I would love to have this brought back so we can make that decision as a council. And I'm certain that the votes would probably be there, but I don't want to speak for any members on this council to decide that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear from the other members of the council. By the way, just factually, you talked about the last 10 years. I have brought forward 2 proposals successfully for additional deputies. Additionally, we hired an additional motor deputy. We just agreed to the DUI deputy, and I negotiated with the county to receive 1 deputy in perpetuity in exchange for opening the crisis stabilization unit. So that's 5, only 4 of which are we paying for. So just, that's the record on number of deputies.
But it was for clarification on that, the 2 SROs were released in 2020, and then were brought back in 2022. So the net positive on that is still 3.
So we did not release those SROs.
I'm looking at the numbers here. So from 2013 to 2023, there was a SPO added in 2019. There was a reduction of 2 SROs in 2020. There was an addition of an SPO in July of 2020, and then we added 2 SROs in December of 2022. In July of 2023, we added a motor deputy, and then at our last meeting, we hired a traffic deputy.
We absorbed those SROs back into our deputy contingent. We didn't lose any positions. And I get that from our previous city manager and from our previous captains. So we didn't have a functional reduction in the number of sworn officers in Vista when the school refused to have them in the school. We lost revenue from the school district, who at the time was paying 60% of the cost of those SRO salaries, but we didn't jettison those positions. So anyway,
I understand. I mean, that was a budget cut from VUSD.
I'm actually not counting the SROs in the 5 that I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the new positions that we've authorized for the, and every single one of them has been a knockdown, drag-out battle. Well, actually, the last 2 weren't.
The last 2 were not, and that was the point I was making.
I know, the last 2 were a great consensus. Let's hear from, if you don't have anything else.
No, I mean, I just want to clarify what I was saying, and that is from 2013 to 2022, what we have as a city is 2 additional deputies hired, less the SROs, right?
Are you including the DUI deputy that we just?
I'm not including any of that. So I'm talking the last 2 deputies we've hired began in July of 2023. So everything prior to that includes the 2 SROs, the reduction of the SRRs from VUSD, as well as the 2 SPOs that were hired in 2019 and 2020 respectively.
I can't speak specifically to what you're looking at because I'm not looking at it, but every one of these questions was, before these last 2 deputies, was a knockdown, drag-out battle up here that I won't ever forget. So I'm just telling you the history of what this council did while I've been here has been so far to add 5 new deputy positions. Although actually the CSU deputy wasn't a council action. That was one that I negotiated outside of the council and got it for free from the county of San Diego. Let's hear from Deputy Mayor Melendez.
Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. I appreciate this being brought forward, but in speaking with staff, I agree that it's appropriate to have a budget discussion about personnel. And also something we have asked for is more information on personnel, because I'm seeing that there's a variety of needs. And I appreciate, Captain Boyce, you mentioned that you don't want to get into the details, but this is exactly the type of conversation where we do want to get into the details. So I think it would be best to move forward with the motion on the floor. I'll go ahead and second that, based on City Manager's recommendation to have a budget discussion.
Okay, that motion is not debatable and goes to an immediate vote, so please cast your votes. Okay, that's going to bring us to the end of our regular items in our agenda. I think we don't have anything else, right? Nope. So we'll go now to comments from staff. Mr. Chung? Mr. Conley?
I have a brief comment, Mayor. The Cyclovia Vista event, please come out Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and join us in our downtown for our first Cyclovia. Some streets in the downtown will be closed for biking, skateboarding, roller skating, and other self-powered transportation. Enjoy a bike safety class, a scavenger hunt, and sustainability activities. More info at cycloviavista.com. We also have some community workshops in October on the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, the Community Development Block Grant, and the Age-Friendly Plan, and we will have those all on itsyourvista.com for any details. Thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you. I just want to begin by thanking our fire department for holding the stakeholder meeting on Saturday. A lot of good information came out of that. They're doing great work as well. As I always do, I want to thank my wife for allowing me to be here. Allie, I love you very much. I'm looking forward to being home at a reasonable hour so we can maybe watch a show. Next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I want to just give a sincere and I want to give recognition to all those that have been impacted by somebody who has suffered from that terrible disease. I do have one of my good friend's mothers. Luckily, she survived, but was diagnosed at stage 4, so a lot of complications with that. But because I will not be at the next meeting to recognize it, I have a family obligation that I need to attend to. So I just wanted to mention that. On a much happier note, Mr. Conley, I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but on Friday, it's your birthday. So I wanted to wish you a very, very happy birthday.
All right,
yes.
Happy birthday.
I was told Imelda's going to come down and sing. I don't know if that's true.
Do we have the cake ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
You all have a good night.
All right. Councilmember Contreras.
Yeah, you know what? I actually had a question about the last item, and I didn't get to ask it, so I guess I'm not able to now, right, City Attorney? Okay. So, yeah. But I just will say that last year we had 83 juvenile arrests, and this year we're at 52. And I do want to know what resources we have. I can talk online to staff, but what resources go to the folks that are committing these crimes? Because I think if we can maybe help reduce the need for whether it's socially being in a gang or economically, that's something that could be advantageous to the city. I'm really sad because I still have not had my NCTD meeting. It was canceled for this month, so I have nothing to report on the NCTD front. Although I do think, City Manager, we are going to have is the kickoff this year for the grade separation plan? Or is that next year? I can't remember.
I think that's, as far as the consulting work that's going on, the design, I think that's going to kick off this year.
Okay.
We're still in the throes of it, but I'll find out from engineering and follow up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. We are the only city on the Sprinter corridor that has funding to look at a grade separation plan. This is a critical need for our city. Vista Village Crossing is just incredibly important to keep that clear for our first responders, whether it's law enforcement or our fire department. And, you know, it's not always clear there. And in the future, when the Sprinter realizes it's a 15-minute headways, the gate downtime will be really long. So I'm really happy that we are potentially going to be able to have some kind of a grade separation, which could also bring a quiet zone with it. So anyways, I'll look forward to that discussion when it comes. Thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your night. And Mr. Conley, happiest of birthdays. I hope you really enjoy it and take some additional time off.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Friday, 9/27/24, you're going to age again. That's cool. We're all happy that you were born. It would be a bummer if you weren't born. So props to your mom and dad and everything they did to make that happen. Also, huge shout out to Patsy Chow and Joe Vaca. You know, Program 8, I feel so educated right now. Anytime you can come up here and talk to us about our housing element and the amount of housing we need to provide for our community and kind of how we're hitting those goals, to me, it's a big deal. So I really appreciate you guys digging into it and educating us on that. Another thing, I only have 4.25 more council meetings up here. Slow clap for me. That's right. 2 in October, 2 in November, and a quarter meeting in December. And then I will be the civilian standing at the lectern, verbally abusing all of my elected officials when I need to. So hopefully we're all excited for that. Also, I wanted to say today is Taco Tuesday in Vista. If you didn't know, now you know. Get yourself a taco. And my daughter Emily is in from Oregon, and my whole family is actually watching this council meeting tonight in my living room. So Jennifer, I love you. Emily, Elena, Joey, Blair, Calla, Shane. Hope you really enjoyed everything. Isn't the mayor and my crew so fun? Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Deputy Mayor.
Not too much more from me, but I did see an FYI on our council calendar I thought might be relevant based on our discussions tonight. Our DA Summer Stephan is doing a Prop 36 educational forum on Thursday, September 26th. That's going to be in Oceanside. And is that information available on our city website? Can we make that available in case people are interested in learning more about Prop 36? But I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks for the discussion.
Okay, over 50 volunteers joined in last Saturday to collect 1,251 pounds of trash, 105 pounds of recycling material, and 30 pounds of green waste at the Buena Creek Trail. So we want to say special thank you to all those who participated and to our city's stormwater, public works, and community improvement teams for working with those volunteers to make Vista more beautiful, cleaner, and safer. Our fire department open house in October, a different fire station will host an open house every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. where residents can learn about fire safety and meet department personnel. That'll be fun. I know that we'll get all those on the council's calendars, and I know we'll look forward to being there, so coming out and see us in the fire department. Free mulch and compost. Public Works offers free mulch and compost for residents on the first Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of October, November, and December. The location is at the vacant lot at Vale Terrace Drive and Williamson Street. For more information on the fire department open houses and the free mulch and compost giveaway, visit the city's calendar at vista.gov. And I want to say thank you to my wife, Shauna, for allowing me to serve and being here with you instead of being with her. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, have a great night, everybody. We're adjourned.